In this video, we're talking all about that Josh D'Amaro, JP Morgan Q&A the other day. A lot of interesting stuff there. And this guy right here brought up a fascinating point. It could be a game changer for Josh D'Amaro, and not necessarily in a good way either. But we're going to talk about it. We're going to break it down up next on OG 55. Welcome aboard to another episode of OG 55. I am joined by my fantastic panel. We got Vast Sky, host of the Freshly Squeezed Show, and Citrus George, the family man, 23, down below. I'm going to start with, actually, I'll start with you first, George. Usually we start with Vast. Start with you first today. George, welcome back, brother. If you could let everybody home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. Glad to be back. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Disney Family Man 23. You can interact with me on Twitter at Disney George. You could also find me on the podcast, A Walk with Walt. But of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And right over here, we got Dr. Dre, host of the Freshly Squeezed Show. Welcome back, Dr. Dre.
Hey, and it is I am happy to be back. Happy to be back for sure. Thank you so much for having me, OG, talk about this because we were talking about this over the phone, and we said, I think we should bring this to the viewers' attention. So it's long overdue. It's been a pretty interesting couple of weeks to the Walt Disney Company, and I'm sure it's about to get more interesting. But before we get to that, if you guys want to go ahead and follow me at home, you can go do so right there at VashSky. Just go ahead. Just type that right in there, and it should pop up for, as Christine Waysense McCarthy would say, for all the
robust
discussion right there. And if you guys want to see me, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55, where we have some amazing shows, including my own, Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice, news, and info, squeezed fresh, right from the Grove.
Pay attention, it's Joe time.
There you go.
Perfect. All right, let's dive right in. So I believe we have, Dre, we have some audio from this JP Morgan event. Is that correct?
Yes,
so,
we do.
I guess what we'll do is we'll play the audio, stop, talk about it, play a little more, stop, talk about it. We'll kind of go through it. I think that's kind of like the best way to kind of break this down.
I agree.
So we'll go ahead and do that, and I'll let you set the table.
All right. So this was at the 51st annual JP Morgan Global Technology Media and Conference. And Communications Conference, that Josh D'Amaro recently attended. And he was interviewed by, I believe it's Phil Cusick, if I'm not mistaken. Cusick, sorry. And what they talked about was basically, just going over the Disney Parks Experiences Parks division. And you heard some people actually, write articles about it and kind of take some specific, words out and stuff like that and kind of extrapolate what they think is going on in the division, especially as it relates to what Josh D'Amaro was actually saying. But I kind of wanted to go over his comments. They actually provide an audio recording of the interview, and I thought it was pretty illuminating because there was some stuff that people picked up on and a lot of stuff that people didn't. And as Orange Grove 55, my esteemed colleague here, foreshadowed in the beginning, there might be, I think there's something in here that a lot of people overlooked, and I wanted to go ahead and bring that to your attention as well. So we'll go ahead, we'll play the call, and we'll just go over it, and we'll stop and go as is necessary. So here we go.
Here we go.
Morning. There are more seats over here, if anybody wants to walk over. Welcome to the 51st Annual JP Morgan TMC Conference. I'm Phil Cusick. I follow the communications and media space. I'm pleased to welcome Josh D'Amaro, Chairman of Disney Parks Experiences and Products since 2021, and coming up on your 25th anniversary at Disney. Congratulations.
Yeah, started at Disneyland 25 years ago.
There you go. Before we go any further, I do need to audition to be the next IR head. Certain statements today including statements about the company's plans, expectations, strategy, or business prospects, including drivers of growth and consumer sentiment, behavior, and demand, and other statements that are not historical in nature may constitute forward-looking statements under securities laws. Any information that is not historical in nature is subject to change. The statements are made on the basis of management's current views and assumptions regarding the future, and management does not
don't make
undertake
financial
any obligation to update
decisions
forward-looking
based on what we
statements
say
are
here.
subject to a number of risks and uncertainties. Actual results may differ materially from results expressed or implied in light of a variety of factors, including macroeconomic or industry conditions and execution risks, including in connection with the nature, timing, and pricing of our products and services, and other factors contained in the company's Form 10-K, Form 10-Qs, and other filings with the SEC, as well as the company's IR website.
There we
Think I'm
go.
going to get the job?
Just basically says, don't mess up, Josh, right?
Don't mess up, Josh. Or if you do, it's okay.
It's okay.
Is it, though?
Okay.
All right.
I know, right?
Let's start with the big
That's
picture and what you're
foreshadowing.
seeing in demand at the domestic parks. Just talk a little bit about what you do overall, because it's not just parks.
Yeah,
And
so
let's talk about what's going on.
Disney experiences, Disney parks experiences and products. So I
Already
oversee all
messed
the
up.
theme parks around the world. Oversee our experiences. So you can think about it, Adventures by Disney or National Geographic Expeditions, Disney Vacation Club, the cruise lines. I oversee a part of the business called Consumer Products, Games, and Publishing.
And lightsaber
I think
waxing.
You know quite a bit about, and it's a pretty big, sizable piece of the Disney company.
Yeah.
Domestic, you want to hear a little bit
Yeah,
about
let's start.
our domestic business. So, first of all, the business has been performing exceptionally well. You've seen that in our earnings. I'll start off by saying I have an incredibly strong team, an incredibly strong management team in our domestic parks and experiences, and they've navigated through arguably some of the most difficult times that we've ever had at the Walt Disney Company, certainly within DPAP.
That's
Real
pretty
quick,
revealing right there. Go ahead.
it is revealing, and I just want to give him a little credit because we've been very hard on Josh, and rightfully so. I mean, he deserves criticism for a lot of stuff, but I do like how we're not even barely into this interview. He's already thanking his team. I think that shows class, absolute class. It's not about Josh. It's about, hey, look, I couldn't do this without them. I think that was really good.
And as he said, arguably some of the most difficult times that we've ever had at the Walt Disney Company, and certainly within Disney Parks experiences and products. He's giving you kind of an outline of the gravity of the moment. This has been pretty tough, as one can imagine when you have all your parks closed at one point in time, right? And they're starting to come online internationally, which he'll bring out here, but also to how they navigate kind of the domestic transition cycle into this kind of new realm here that they've kind of entered into. It's pretty interesting. So we'll go ahead.
And I think, and really quick, I was just going to say, yeah, I think, and that's why I gave Josh a chance in the very beginning, because I think whoever would have taken these positions from 2020 on didn't really know what they were getting themselves into, as if it were to be prior to the shutdown. But yeah, as things are starting to progress and reopen and everything, now we have to start seeing that we have to get out of this 2020 cocoon, if you will. And it's like we got to break it open and go.
But how they come out of this, that's interesting. And he'll get into it for sure.
We've invested aggressively in these parks. We were investing before we went into COVID. We continued to invest once we came out of COVID. And the guests have responded to that. We have a lot of celebrations going on around the world. At Walt Disney World specifically, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary. And when we do these celebrations, Phil, we're serious about them. These are big celebrations, so our guests have responded to that. So we've, pretty proud of the results that we've had domestically in our parks.
I keep bringing up the 50th anniversary, and they're very proud of it. I mean, I don't know. And he's saying that at Walt Disney World specifically, we are celebrating our 50th anniversary, as if to say it's still going on.
It's still going on.
Not,
yeah.
Well, yeah.
It's definitely ended. But
That's weird. But I will say this, though. I think that being in this community, I think that there is a level of like distortion as to the reality on the ground sometimes. Like we as diehard Disney fans, we didn't like the 50th, but it is possible the normies are giving them a lot of feedback that they did. If the hardcore fans like ourselves are more hypercritical. So it's not necessarily what's happening on from what they're seeing maybe.
Yeah.
So like we're seeing it like, oh, the 50th was a total failure. They didn't even have Walt on the castle until 6 months later.
Right.
Like the normies, like, I don't give a shit. You know what I'm saying? So I think that they probably are seeing that it was successful for the general public.
Yeah, I mean, if they have their own internal targets that they're hitting, regardless of what people might think of the 50th. I mean, if you have money in the bank, you know, and you've hit all of your financial metrics,
Yeah.
and you know, to a group of invested-minded people, that's a success, right? So it's
a vote with your wallet, basically.
He corrects himself here on his next paragraph.
We noted in our last earnings call that, lapping that 50th, we expect to see some moderation in the demand at Walt Disney World. The Disneyland Park in Anaheim continues to perform exceptionally well. And then both Bob and Christine talked about Disney Cruise Line and how strong that product has come out of COVID. We added a fifth ship, and our occupancies are high, our rates are high, so that business is performing really well.
Okay, so that's interesting right there. So we're lapping the 50th, so he acknowledges that it is sunsetting that there. And that the same thing that Christine Wason-McCarthy said on the earnings call, he reiterates here that they expect to see some moderation in demand at Walt Disney World. Now, this is very interesting because, well, this is also on the eve of them announcing and releasing a new ticket offer for the summer that's pretty aggressive. Right. George, can you speak on that a little bit there? I mean, I don't think people realize how big that is.
Yeah, so it was 2 days ago, May 23rd, Disney dropped a 4-day, 4-park Magic ticket, which basically is a one-tiered price ticket for all 4 theme parks, and it's priced at $99 per day. So essentially it's $99 times 4, which is actually a smoking deal just for a 4-day park base ticket. It does not include park hopper. It's 1 park per day. You could choose any park you want to start out with and end with. It doesn't have to go in a specific order. But the caveat to this, which was very kind of interesting, was there are no reservations required for this ticket. And that to me is very telling because Disney also dropped that day ticket holders will no longer have to require park reservations, only annual pass holders. So as you had mentioned earlier about, kind of gearing towards a specific audience, Disney's very well telling that they want these select group of people, which are, as OG pointed out, the normies, the vacationers, rather than these diehard Disney fans. Not that they don't want to cater to them, but again, if you're a annual pass holder that's a local and you're just going to go in, walk around, bring your own bottled water, bring your snacks and go out, Disney's not making any profit on that.
They're not, and those people, the locals they're more resilient to bad economic times. It's much easier for a person like me who has a Magic Key to go to the park on a whim, and it doesn't cost me anything except gas money, And like you said, George, I can bring a bottle of water and some snacks, and I'm good to go. A vacationer, though, it's a lot more of an ordeal. And when we're entering in really hard financial times, and this is going to impact Universal and all these other parks too, but they're preparing for that. We're already in it, really, but they're preparing for even worse. And the tourism is really going to dry up. So they really need to appeal to those tourists and incentivize them any way they can. They can't throw any hurdles in their way. They got to get them in there.
And to add a little bit, sorry, Dre, just really quick. And the other interesting thing to this specific ticket is it's during the summertime. Yeah. So it goes from the summer months. Now, there's only a few blockout dates, July 1st through the 4th and September 1st to the 4th. Everything else, it runs all the way through September 29th, I believe. So when you release a promotional ticket like that for the summer, is that telling that numbers aren't really what they are expecting to be? Because this also ties into something that I've experienced with planning our trip coming up in July. And I actually talked to Dre on the phone about this. When I did the dining reservations, and even till today, Dre, there are still openings for sci-fi.
Yeah, people have to understand that sci-fi dining, because of the lack of experiences in general at Disney Hollywood Studios, and because of the uniqueness of that specific offering, that usually goes up real quick, right? That it's very rare to have sci-fi dining available at all, even on a 60-day out basis, right? And to find that you can get sci-fi dining reservations for the same day is startling. It really, really is. I got some heat and some pushback on a tweet I had made, earlier in the year regarding Knott's Berry Farm and how they were kind of having and experiencing problems, and it was kind of surprising to me. And I was like, well, is this a canary in the coal mine for the entire industry?
Right.
People reassured me that it wasn't, but I was like, yeah, but this is the premier park for Cedar Fair here. If people aren't going to, a locals driven theme park like that, are they necessarily going to go out, and spend big money to go at a place like Walt Disney World? This could be an industry-wide trend that we're seeing here, and now we know that is accurate. That is accurate when we look at the financial results of some of these other, players in the theme park space, whether it be SeaWorld, whether it be Cedar Fair. And some other places, and even Disney on their earnings call saying that, hey, look, it's gonna be soft this summer. We have enough anecdotal evidence to go on with the sci-fi dining reservations, and then we have the company acknowledging that in other ways, like this ticket offer for the summer. Now, I will be fair. I believe it was the Disney Dish podcast that actually brought this up. And Jim, Len Testa, who runs the touring plans, who's kind of the foremost expert on attendance at Walt Disney World, he was suggesting that demand had been softening summer by summer leading up to the pandemic, because it's a very hot time, literally, for people to actually visit, and people were kind of spreading out naturally, and that was part of the pricing strategy for Disney as well, to kind of price people out and to spread them out throughout the year. But this is coming after Tron just opened. I was
just going to bring that up. I was just going to bring that up to you, fellas,
right?
Because this also ties into the resort rooms. They also have 25% off of staying on property at the resort hotels. If you're an annual pass holder, it's 35% off your hotel room. So I'm glad you brought that up, Dre, because that was going to be my question to you, fellas. Do you think that Tron was such a big anticipation, and because of the length of time that people just kind of lost interest for it? And it's like, well, when we get there, but it's like, I'm not going to make a special trip for this, because it seems like there was more hype for Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind than Tron. And it's like the roles like switched.
Well, I think what happened, George, is those hotel rooms that they're having to discount, those rooms were woke and people don't want them. I'm just kidding.
That's funny.
No. In all seriousness, no, you're absolutely right. I think Cosmic Rewind, I think that that ride got a ton of buzz, man. That was really the sleeper hit, which is kind of funny because that's kind of how Mission Breakout worked as well. Mm-hmm. Like Mission Breakout came out the gate, like just people were loving that thing. I heard no negative, talk about that attraction, and which is unusual in Diz Twitter. Cosmic Rewind is the same thing. I haven't heard anyone say anything about that attraction. Tron was highly anticipated for longer. People were really, really hyped for that for a long, long time. But then it opened and it was kind of like, okay. And I think a part of that fizzle out of Tron was because we had Cosmic first. I think if Tron would have opened first and then we had Cosmic, I think there would have been better momentum. Because I do think, from what I'm hearing, I think Cosmic is the better attraction. I just think following Cosmic, it just seems kind of even though it's a great ride,
Right. And to actually credit Tom Corliss from WDW News Today, he made a great point from a video he did, I think, months and months ago, when he said the same thing that you said, OG. I think when you're taking an attraction that was already pre-existing from how many years into another theme park, and that's going to fall onto the back end of an attraction that is brand spanking new with this type of ride omni-coaster technology, it lacks. So
Right.
yeah, so he actually said that if Tron would have opened first, opposite of Cosmic Rewind, it would have been different outcome and a different outcome.
And I think you have multiple things playing here as well. I mean, we are hearing some bad times maybe ahead on the kind of economy side of things, right? We hear the company talk about macroeconomic factors, but I mean that's hitting regular people as well, and people are tightening up in terms of where they're spending, how they're spending, and how much they're spending.
Right.
Even when it comes to booking a vacation at Walt Disney World, are they going to do 7? Are they going to do 6? Are they going to do 4? We're seeing this kind of trail off even there. It's going to be interesting to see the per caps for this summer because that'll be revelatory as well. But is an attraction like Tron enough of a draw to get people to go? You know what? It's worth investing in a vacation to see Walt Disney World,
And especially since they're hearing too of the how do I put this? Certain sizes of people to be able to actually ride this attraction.
That's true.
Because I mean, a lot of people on social media and on YouTube and other platforms that they're saying that it's not necessarily your body mass of your upper body, it's actually your legs, where if it doesn't fit around where the bar is supposed to shut, then you have to subdue yourself to sitting in a regular car, which is okay. But that's not what Tron's purpose was supposed to be. It's supposed to give you the exhilarating sensation of riding a light cycle.
Right.
Yeah, it could be a factor. Yeah, that could be a factor.
We'll go ahead and continue on with this because he does talk about maybe some of the economic issues that they may be facing in more in depth here.
Okay. We've been, I think since we were at this conference a year ago, hearing about a recession that's going to come anytime. Have you seen any change in consumer demand in the U.S.?
No, you've seen our earnings, so Q2 exceptionally strong. The one place that we do expect some moderation, as I said, is at Walt Disney World as we come off of that 50th celebration. Anytime we do a celebration, we expect there to be a bit of moderation on that front. We did, in our Q2 earnings, operating income in our domestic parks versus Q2 prior year was slightly lower. We had mentioned in the Q1 earnings that we would see some costs coming into the system. Important to note, though, on those domestic parks, they were 50% higher than fiscal year 19. So clearly our experiences and our commercial strategies are working for us.
And international is still, some parks still starting to ramp. Talk about where we are in Europe and Asia.
Yeah, international has definitely started to ramp. Similarly, we have a very, very strong leadership team internationally, and this team has been through some significant ups and downs, parks opening and closing and reopening, and they've done it so well, and I'm really proud of that team. Each of our parks internationally is performing well. You saw us talk about that in Q2. Shanghai Disney Resort volumes are up. Guest spending is up pretty significantly. Hong Kong Disneyland has done very well with a local audience when guests from outside mainland China and international couldn't come in. They were doing well with the local audience. Then mainland China has just started to open, so it's much easier to get a visa now. So we're starting to see mainland China volume increase in Hong Kong. And then international has just started to come back, but we still have plenty of opportunity to plane out there. So Hong Kong doing very well. And then Disneyland Paris, a lot going on there from a product perspective, from a commercial transformation standpoint, and we're seeing the volumes up there and guest spending up pretty significantly as well. So international has been performing really well for us, and they're just coming out of COVID, as you know.
Okay, so go ahead.
Keep an eye on Paris because Paris is hungry for new stuff. And when Avengers Campus opened, it was like, right? And they got some pretty cool stuff on the horizon for that studio park with like the Frozen thing and all that stuff. I think, and those are really high quality areas. So I think that Paris resort keep your eye on that one. I think we're going to see a lot of growth coming from Paris in the next few years. Surprising is Hong Kong. That's kind of been the ugly duckling in the theme park portfolio for Disney for a long time. And to hear Daddy Josh talk about how good it's doing is actually pretty encouraging because that park has been That's a Michael Eisner era park, and that park has been flailing for years. So I'm glad that things are picking up, and maybe, you know, the castle refurb that they recently did, I'm not a huge fan of it. It looks okay, but maybe that's helping. They can do more stuff with their castle shows now because it's a bigger structure with the projections. You know, with Frozen coming and all that. So I'm encouraged to hear they're investing in that park and that it's doing better, because it's been, I'm telling you, it's been a wounded animal for years.
It has been tough. It has been tough, and not being able to expand via a second gate also puts its future in jeopardy. So it's like, ooh, you know, how are you going to keep people coming back here when you're landlocked so much out there? We know that the locals haven't necessarily embraced that park to the extent that maybe they wanted beforehand. So to hear that there are signs of improving. Also, too, I think it's only posted like profitability like twice or something like that,
and it's been open since 2005, so that's significant. You know, only two times in all those years. And I do think it's good, and I know Iger gets a lot of shit for this, and rightfully so. I get it. I understand it, but with his relationship with the Chinese, pretty good. So so I think with that second gate, if anyone's going to make moves on that and negotiate something, he's probably the guy to do that, you know. So that's interesting. We'll see if that happens. I don't know. I'm just kind of, you know, I'm just saying I think there's a better chance of working something out in that regard with Iger there than it was with Chapek. And if that happens, maybe not, but we'll see.
You talk about Paris. He does expand on this point as well, to alluding to the investments that they're making there. So let's hear it.
Should we think of Paris running sort of full run rate like the U.S. at this point?
Yeah, they're running really strong. I think there's still opportunity to go. That whole park is under a transformation. So I was just there a couple months ago. If you walk in the Disneyland park and you see the renovations that have taken place there and the pride that these cast members have and the product that they're offering, it's pretty stunning. And then in the Studios park, we just opened Avengers Campus, so bringing Marvel to that part of the world, and the guests have reacted very strongly to that. The ratings are high, attendance is very high, spend is very high. We're in the midst of celebrating the 30th anniversary. It's a 30th anniversary for Disneyland Paris as well, and guests similar to the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World have responded very well to that. And we're not even close to done in Disneyland Paris. We have a whole new Frozen themed area coming in and plenty of room for expansion there. And again, it's not just the product that is new and fresh at Disneyland Paris. It's also the commercial strategies. We're much clearer in our commercial strategies. We're certainly not doing as much discounting as we have in the past, and you know, the team's really taken it to the next level there.
It's interesting. So we just recently heard from Bob. I believe his YouTube channel is Berry Place 28, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, that is correct.
He was just there at the Avengers Campus in Paris, and he saw firsthand how people there were reacting to the Marvel product out there much more strongly than they did even at the domestic parks like Disney California Adventure, for example. And that was a little bit revelatory. It was like, oh wow, okay, and this thing really is doing well. So when Josh is saying that they have been responding to Avengers Campus out there very well, he's spot on, which hopefully that means that they'll continue to invest in the Marvel product out there, because if they do, then hey, if you're building, let's say, a new e-ticket attraction, right, at your Disney California Adventure Park, does that mean we can build two? And if it does mean we can build two, does that mean we can invest more into the product, knowing that those development costs and those installation costs might be spread out amongst two locations and get a better value for that. Go ahead, George.
But correct me if I'm wrong. Are they then taking the overall assumption that all three of these Avengers campuses are supposed to be intertwined with one another? Because if they make a duplicate of an attraction that's going to be in the domestic parks, would that then change the storyline of what it is for the other two campuses?
I think the connectivity is there, but I think it's connectivity through like subtle kind of Easter egg kind of stuff. I don't think there's like, from what I understand, the connectivity, there are references to the Avengers campus in DCA in the Paris version, but they're kind of like, it's like very subtle here and there references. There's not any, the attractions don't have any like really important like story beats that are connected and depend on the other resort. So I don't think that's really going to affect anything. I think you can have two of the same rides, and maybe each of those rides will reference the other resort or something little like that. But the stories themselves are not super interconnected, at least.
And even if it is, or that was Disney's approach, you know, that could always go right out the door, where it's like, you know what, it would be better to save on cost than to move forward with a project where it's supposed to be making more money, but you're actually ended up losing money. Star Cruiser.
Well, we'll get to that. Don't think of the interconnectivity being a hindrance to creativity as much as maybe like the timeline would be for Star Wars,
right,
for example, right? Yeah. It's not the same kind of metric there. And here's the thing: before the e-ticket was unceremoniously canceled, or at least the first version of it was, and then this new kind of King Thanos version was put on the table. The original, what is it? The aircraft from
the Quinjet.
The Quinjet ride was originally going to be at Hong Kong as well. So there was always a plan to duplicate the attractions, whether it be for Disney California Adventure in Hong Kong or Disney California Adventure and maybe even Paris. So that's the distinction right there. He also mentions Frozen, which has been pretty successful there. But then he talks about Asia as well.
How should we think about Hong Kong and Shanghai versus that sort of U.S. sort of full run rate? Paris sounds like getting there. Are they at half of that level where they could be? I would think probably more, given how fast
they still have plenty of run room. And as I said before, they've come out very quickly as the COVID restrictions have come down. But we're seeing the guest behavior, exceptionally strong, volume-wise and rate-wise. The great thing about both Hong Kong and Shanghai Disneyland is there's expansion underway in the near term. So we have opportunity to even accelerate beyond what we're seeing from a results perspective right now. Shanghai Disney Resort, we're opening a brand new land called Zootopia. I was just there and had a chance to walk around and see that new land. Our Imagineers are amazing, the worlds that they create. And Zootopia is the #1 animated film in China. And so we know there's going to be a huge response to that. That's opening later this year. Hong Kong Disneyland, the same thing. They've got a refreshed new castle, all kinds of new shows, and they'll be opening a Frozen-themed area inside of that park. So as well as they are performing right now, there's room for expansion and room for further commercial value.
Room for expansion, room for further commercial value. We will see how that relates to Hong Kong. Like I said, they are kind of landlocked there, so if you're going to add something, you got to take something away. What that will be, we will find out, I'm sure. But for Shanghai, we all kind of wondered why they are choosing the attractions that are being built, not only internationally but domestically as well, and what movies and franchises they're investing in. When I believe Bob Iger himself said the franchise that they're investing in, what sequels that they're actually going to be providing here, Zootopia was one of them. And we all kind of like, that's interesting. They're not doing this one, not doing that one. They're doing Zootopia. Well, you just heard why they're doing that, right? #1 film in China. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. And that's why Shanghai gets a Zootopia land.
Yep. Let's continue.
So this one is pretty interesting because, again, it goes over some of the COVID era stuff. But more importantly than that, how they kind of reshape the business surrounding that. We've heard, Josh talk about the opportunities that's provided by COVID. Here, he's going to explain in detail what those were.
Okay. Talk about the yield management software that you brought in during COVID. What kind of benefit does that give you, both today when there's a ton of demand, and then assuming that things slow down a little bit at some point, how do you react then?
Yeah, I mean, pre-COVID, and particularly coming out of COVID, we became a lot more precise in terms of how we were thinking about our yield management strategy. And to your point, we made some pretty significant investments in software and technology to get us there. We have a reservation system that we put in place, which helps us better predict who's going to be in the park and how to manage that most effectively. We're much more precise in terms of how we think about promotions and targeting, et cetera. So when we went into the pandemic, we really took that opportunity to stop for a moment and think about where we wanted to be in the future and start to implement some of these new tools. And they've been exceptionally productive for us. From an economic uncertainty perspective, I don't think anybody's completely immune to a recession. We certainly wouldn't be, but the commercial tools that we have in place right now will allow us to navigate a lot more aggressively and precisely than we have in the past. Like I said, we know who's coming to our parks and when they're coming to our parks. That allows us to plan our labor much more aggressively. We can be a lot more precise in our targeting of consumers and how we think about promotions and price offerings, et cetera. Our ticketing strategy allows us to toggle between different price points and think about demand in different ways. So we are a lot more sophisticated now than we were pre-pandemic. And should we see any volatility from an economic perspective, we think we're in a pretty good position to be able to manage, not immune from a recession, but certainly manage in a better way than we have been in the past. It's also important to note that anytime we have gone into an economic recession, we've come out a lot smarter and stronger than we have in the past.
Okay.
It's interesting. There's a lot of fans. Obviously, they don't like the reservation system. It's been a hot button issue for fandom since the parks reopened, but it must provide really great results because Universal's been surveying their guests on reservations a lot. I've been seeing a lot of surveys about, what do you think about the reservation system at Disney, yada, yada, yada. They're doing that because they're considering it as well, maybe to some degree, who knows, and they're kind of putting their feelers out there. Now, maybe they won't do it. They probably won't. But I think they're seeing the results that Disney's getting with that reservation system. And they're probably like, okay, well, that's kind of attractive. Maybe we should consider something like that here. Now, again, it's not very popular with Disney guests, so I don't think Universal will. But I'm just kind of giving you guys an idea as to, like, when we see Disney doing this reservation system and we're like, oh, man, this sucks. There's a reason for it. And it's the yield, the money. And even Universal's taking notice. That's why you're seeing it in those surveys. Go ahead, George.
But now that Disney is starting to drop the reservation system for the ticket guests, wouldn't that essentially be hurting Universal? Because now they'd be putting themselves in a position that Disney's moving forward. Now they're moving backwards.
Well, one of the sells that Universal is kind of pushing right now is that, or even not necessarily Universal, but even like, the fans in general are like, well, Universal's less complicated. So I'm going to go over there. And so you're right, George. I mean, the less barrier to entries that we have to get into Disney, it will probably affect Universal because that's one of the biggest selling points right now to Universal is you don't need a reservation. So you don't need a reservation. So if Disney starts to kind of whittle away at that, yeah, it probably will hurt them to some degree. Go ahead, Dre.
It's interesting. On the complicated issue, the interviewer actually asks about that, which is interesting. So I'll leave my comments on there for when that actually comes up. But a couple of things on the whole reservation system. Like, there is a benefit, financial benefit, to activating a reservation system, right? I think what some people are concerned about is that necessarily a hindrance to growth, or is the complexity so much that people are dissuaded from visiting Walt Disney World and going over to Universal instead? It's an interesting discussion. We did see that when Disney was, Disneyland, let's say, was telling people no, Knott's Berry Farm and everybody around there was telling people yes, right? So we saw that in the micro level. How does that work on the macro level? That's kind of the thing that has to be kind of weighed in and so forth. But it's interesting. George brings it up that they're slowly whittling away the reservation system, at least for now, right? As more economic headwinds come into focus, right?
Right.
And so it definitely is a hindrance on some level, and they're acknowledging that through whittling it away, to bring in more people.
Right.
But you can see them. I mean, this is them pulling levers,
right,
when justified. And I think when demand surges, you might actually have them be reinstated.
That's what I was just going to say, because they'll talk about it, further down when they mention about the $17 billion investment for Walt Disney World.
Sure.
So being that they're doing this now with no reservations, that's making me wonder, are they really going to invest right now? Because then why would you then remove the reservation system because the more expansion you have, then you're already going to be anticipating more people. So if they remove that reservation system right now, it's because they're not really going to make headwinds until they decide to say, you know what, we're going to expand Magic Kingdom, we're going to expand Animal Kingdom, and then there goes those levers to say, okay, let's reinstate the reservation system again, even for ticket guests.
They talked about the software and how they can look and kind of predict more better manage and predict, the bookings and so forth, and how many people will actually be coming to these parks. That affords them the opportunity to adjust their strategy accordingly. That's what kind of Josh is actually talking about there. And
Right.
what'd you hear from him? Economic recession. You can see that that's kind of front of mind right there,
Right.
and how that'll actually impact the business. And I think it will. He even acknowledges that we're not going to be completely separate from it. We're going to be insulated, but not completely separate. We're going to be hit in some way by the effects of an economic recession. He says that we'll come out of it, smarter and stronger and all of that, which is great. But the yield management in combination with this reservation system, they're kind of one and the same almost, and it allows them to kind of, strategically place people and adjust that supply and demand given the factors of their business. For example, right, he talks about how, well, when people use the reservation system, we can adjust the labor to reflect that. But he never talks about it going the other way, right? And trust me, it goes the other way as well, right?
Of course.
When you have a labor cost that you can't shed, do you suppress how much labor that you're actually utilizing at any one time, and having the reservations available reflect that? That absolutely is going on, and we might see that more depending on the strategies they want to implement. It is a fascinating discussion for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Talks a little bit about Florida now. They're going to be talking about Florida a lot later, but here we go.
I think of you have 30,000 rooms in Florida, and somebody's in that room every night, and the data you're getting on all those people who are walking into the parks. Where are you in the journey of starting to use that data and leverage it across Disney into my Disney Plus subscription and the movies that I go to and things like that?
Yeah, we're very fortunate in the sense that we do have a lot of data about our guests. And again, coming out of the pandemic and putting some of these new tools into place and investing in technology, we have even a more precise understanding about our guests and how to make sure that they have the best experience they possibly can, and how to maximize our assets in terms of how they're moving around the parks and how to offer up the right products to them, et cetera. So we've seen a lot of progress in that regard.
Go ahead.
I just want to say one thing. I just want to bring this up real quick.
Sure.
There's a lot of talk from DeMar about data and what the information they can get from each guest and how they can market to you later, right? There's been a lot of talk about, because Disney's kind of going through it, what's going to happen, right? And there's people speculating what would happen if, like, say, Apple bought Disney, right? Mm-hmm. This is why I'm really bullish. If Apple does buy Disney, because Disney's going under or whatever, if they buy Disney, this is why it's attractive to an Apple, because look at all the data that Apple collects just from their phones alone, and then how they can apply that now to all the various divisions of the Walt Disney Company. I mean, you think the data that Disney gets is good? Oh. Yeah. You have no idea what fucking Apple has on you, and they could even fine tune that even more so. So that's why I'm saying if Apple is the parent company of the Walt Disney Company, eventually, I don't think it will be, but if that is kind of like the break glass in case of emergency situation, I'm telling you, man, that's going to ramp up significantly with Apple running the show, because they got everything about you. I mean, Disney has a lot, but Apple's a lot more.
The data collection front has been a growing influence on the Walt Disney Company for sure. I mean, we just saw recently Christine Wastelands McCarthy talk about, I believe at a previous conference, talk about how the IPs or the franchises that people engage with on Disney Plus will influence future decisions and capital expenditures, both in the studio and in the parks. I mean, that's, like we assume that was the case. We see that a little bit already with the box office results, right? When there's a big box office result from any of these films, well, we gotta get that in the parks and stuff like that. But but to be even more direct and more precise in that is very interesting, because they can break it down in a way that you can't necessarily with the box office, right?
And that makes sense, because even look at the the film Moana. I mean, like, it did well at the box office, but I mean, the data on Disney Plus showed that it's been viewed a lot more, being on the streaming service than actually in the theater. And what are they doing? You start to see Moana meet and greet. There's Moana coming to Epcot, and now the rumor circulating it going into Animal Kingdom. So, I mean, yeah, if the data is there and it proves successful, Disney's they're gonna jump at it.
And you can see like the crosstabs on this data. It's interesting, right? So like with the box office, you just get like, it's just, price per ticket basically, or how many tickets were bought for this specific film or whatever. But with Disney Plus, you can go in there more granularly, right? You can say, okay, for a film like Encanto, for example, how many people are watching that? What age are they? What gender are they? Right? And that could inform decisions. Think of it this way. People say, well, Encanto could work in DCA, and DCA probably needs it. And I would agree with you. DCA probably needs, more investment than Disneyland does, right? And you could see how Encanto might work. It's not a great fit, but you could see it can kind of work and do all that kind of stuff, right? But let's say people like mostly under 12 or whatever are watching Encanto. Like that's where the most usage is actually coming from. Does that inform you to put it somewhere else, your new Encanto investment into any of these parks, like say Fantasyland and Disneyland, for example, rather than DCA? Because Fantasyland appeals to that 12 and under demographic, right? Much more than DCA does. Right. That's the kind of data that they're looking at that they have access now.
I'm telling you.
That's crazy.
And if they were in bed with Apple, they'll know where you went for lunch, even when you're not on property. I'm telling you, it's going to be... It's crazy.
Exactly.
But shall we continue?
He goes on. ESPN, actually.
Walt Disney Company perspective and an enterprise perspective, we have quite a bit of work going on right now to synchronize the data from each of the businesses together, so that I know Phil, and specifically what Phil's interested in, whether you're an ESPN fan or you're a Marvel franchise fan or you've been to the park 6 times before, bringing that data together such that I can talk to you. Okay, so that I can talk to you in a much more progressive way that meets your needs and meets our commercial needs. There's a huge benefit to bringing that data together, and that is certainly underway.
Is there a time frame you can give us on when that all comes together?
It's essentially starting to happen right now, and we'll continue to build technology on top of what we have, so you'll start to see that come together in the very near term.
Yeah. And on that sort of reservation system.
So that's what they're talking about right there, being able to talk with you or communicate with you and what your interests are and how they can cater to you in a creative way. Maybe that influences Genie Plus, Genie. It'll influence the park product, I think, on a ongoing basis here. He talks about complexity at the parks, and it's interesting to hear Josh's comments on this.
And the complaint I get from people, like the people in this room, is that Disney's wonderful. Going to the park is more work than they thought it was going to be when they signed up. Not more money, but more work. How do you think about making it easier for this crowd?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I mean, I spend a lot of time in these parks. If I'm not in a meeting or on a flight, I do try to be in the parks and listen to our fans and our guests about what's working and where they think we have some opportunity.
We listen to our fans. Trust me, OG. I'm not just visiting these places just because I'm looking to have a fun time. I want to listen to the fans.
And that's the issue. Is I'm not advocating for him to not visit the park. Like, I want him to do that. He's doing the right thing. But the problem is that he's taking step 1, but he's not following through with step 2. So
Correct.
He's going to the parks. He's interacting with guests. He's boots on the ground. Fantastic. He's getting feedback. Fantastic. Josh, you're doing great, buddy. The problem is when he goes back to his when he goes back to his office, he doesn't do anything with it, because we're hearing a lot of complaints about this, that, and the other, and it doesn't seem like there's much action on any of that stuff. And
exactly,
you got to follow through.
Well, it's why are we so reactionary? If you're getting this much data and you're getting this much collection and you're getting all this stuff, can't you reasonably predict where to go rather than reacting to economic forces as they happen? And can't we better do things before they happen? It's interesting. He says we're listening to guests and stuff like that, and it's like, well, are you though? I mean, it's like the reservation system's unpopular, and you didn't even think about doing something with it until it was like, oh, well, now we have to because, Wall Street's not doing very well and there might be a recession on, looming. It's like,
Right.
It was never
okay.
based off of our opinion. That's
Exactly.
Yeah, because when he says I'm in the parks all the time listening to feedback, I believe him on that. But it's like the reservation system has got to be the one thing he hears the most about in his ear.
Absolutely.
Hate it, we hate it, we hate it. I'm sure he hears about it all day long, and that's the thing that they're digging their heels in the most. So it's like,
Right.
That's like OG. That's like you coming to me and saying, "Well, we go on this trip. Let's go anywhere but a place that doesn't have seafood. I can't stand it. I don't like it. Don't like the smell. Don't like the taste. Anything but seafood." Okay, OG, I hear you. I understand you don't like seafood. Okay, cool. All right. It comes time for me to make reservations. Hey, let's go to Coral Reef.
yeah, right, exactly.
Well, and on the reservation front there, George, I mean, when we were attempting to book restaurant reservations for this upcoming trip in July that we're kind of all going on, well, I had to wake up at 6 a.m. every single day in order to secure those reservations on a rolling basis to Disneyland because there's only 4 restaurants available in the entire damn park that services, over 60,000 guests per day. And then George, you had to be up 6 a.m. your time, 3 a.m. my time in order to secure reservations for our trip on the Walt Disney World leg of things. And it was just like, okay, that's like a lot of complexity. And it's a lot to ask from guests, and now they're going to make it even more complex because they're going to make Genie Plus reservations now a pre-booked thing as well. This is the kind of complexity, Josh, that Phil, this interviewer, is talking about right here. It's a lot of work to go to these parks, and I'm sorry, but in terms of the complexity situation, Universal's got you beat completely, right? Because I could just walk into Universal on that day, not have to worry about reservations to get into the park, first of all. And then secondly, I'm not having to make the, Genie Plus reservations and, reservations as it relates to many other things, right? I just walk in. Maybe I have to go down to Toadstool Cafe early and get a reservation to come back later. That's the most pre-planning that I have to do. Otherwise, it's a pretty straightforward experience. I'm sorry, but the Disney product hasn't been that for a long, long time. And adding more complexity has got to be a barrier to entry. It just has to be.
Yeah. No, it is a barrier to entry, and it's a barrier. The reservation system, especially, is by design a barrier of entry. Like that's the point. Like that's why it's there.
Exactly. No, I get it. I understand why it's there.
But it's bad for the consumer.
But it's not good for That's where it's going to eventually. And I think even Disney sees this, and this is why that they're making these moves with these special tickets to not include the reservations. They know that sooner or later, people are not going to come back, especially the demographic that they're shooting for. Because as they were just talking about in the discussion, once a person sees how much work you have to do to have a vacation, word gets out, and it's like, are they going to want to come back? Probably not. And then who are they stuck with? They're stuck with us, the annual pass holders that go in and they don't spend. Not me. I actually do spend, but I think we know the people who don't.
Yeah, good experience, you tell 3 people. If you have a bad experience, you tell 10 people. So to your point there, George, I mean, if people are complaining about the complexity of their vacations, they're going to tell a lot of people, and that word is going to get around to a point where you have to where you have to react. And especially, as we talked about before, when you have these kind of bad economic problems on the horizon, it's like, well, we have to reduce that barrier to entry. I mean, they have to see that.
Yeah.
They talk. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I guess they're not super worried because they're not really doing a whole lot to change it. I don't know.
Well, it's we'll get there. He justifies the complexity perspective here as we go on.
From a complexity perspective, let me start with the fact that these theme parks that we operate around the world, these are big places with a lot of things to do. You take Walt Disney World just as an example. 25,000 acres at Walt Disney World. If you were to take Manhattan, you could fit it inside of Walt Disney World. There's probably about as much to do at Walt Disney World as there is to do in Manhattan. And our guests try to consume all of that on a 7-day vacation, sometimes on a 3-day vacation, try to take that all in. So it becomes our obligation then to figure out a way to serve these experiences up to the guests in a way that makes sense for them and not try to tell them to do everything in Walt Disney World in 3 days. And we've invested a fair amount in technology to try to help our guests navigate these big spaces, and that's been working well for us. I still think we have more to do. From a pricing perspective, which can be complex as well, and I've heard some feedback on that, what we're trying to do is make sure that we have variable and flexing pricing everywhere that we can, so that we can invite as many guests into these theme parks as we possibly can. And so from a ticketing standpoint, you'll see us try to have entry level ticket pricing, which is available during certain seasons of the year. On peak days, we're going to obviously have more aggressive pricing in place because we know the demand will be so high. If you think about our hotel portfolio, we have value hotels all the way up to deluxe hotels. And even inside of the park, we want to make sure that there are options for guests to choose how they want to enjoy their experience and choose how they want to spend their money, quite frankly. All that said, that equals complexity, which is what you're talking about. And I've heard that from our guests as well. And we're starting to make some changes on that. We'll continue to invest in technology to simplify the experience. And we'll continue to make changes in terms of how we operate these theme parks to make it easier and more accessible for our guests. You may have seen some of the things that we've done recently. Relaxing, for example, reservations for guests that are buying date-based tickets. So I have a pretty good idea of where guests are going to be, which parks they're going to choose. And so we're relaxing that guideline now to take one additional step out of the process. We're changing pricing strategies in certain areas where we want products to be more accessible to our guests. And you'll continue to hear us push on that as we listen to our biggest fans in terms of what they want to see and making this experience more accessible and simpler for you.
Okay. A couple thoughts on this. Yeah, they are doing this kind of variable pricing model throughout the entire parks line, and this has been going on for a long time here.
Yeah. When
they started adding like tiered pricing to individual tickets, whether it be at Walt Disney World or Disneyland, we saw that quite a number of years ago. We saw them introduce a flex pass, right, that gave certain options and so forth at a reduced price point. What I think a lot of people are seeing in the parks now, though, like in the parks themselves, it's not so much choice. It's like, well, you could have a baseline experience, but if you want to have a deluxe experience, you can pay this much, right? We see this for fireworks viewing, for example, out at Walt Disney World, or Phantasmic viewing for, Disneyland, right? And how all of that is now been adjusted because of this. I suppose it's like, it's disheartening to see them kind of tier all this stuff out to the extent they have, because it is kind of bringing back almost a class system to it, and not too dissimilar to how you would do like a cruise back in the day, right, where you would have steerage and you'd have first class and all the classes in between. It is an unfortunate reality of this, I suppose. But what do you guys think about all this?
Well, whenever you have so when it comes to this, you could either have a flat, just high price to get in, and then you just price people out. Just certain segments of the population just can't go in because they can't afford it. You can do the tier system, but see, here's the thing with the tier system: there's always going to be a level of more access for someone who pays more. Because why would I pay more if I'm going to get the same amount as the person who pays a lot less? So you kind of have to, if you're going to have any tier system, you kind of have to provide a little extra to the person paying more. Otherwise, why am I paying more when this person's not paying? Why are we going to have the same experience? It wouldn't make much sense.
No, I get it.
Do you think they should have had the experience to kind of cater to all? Is that what you're saying, Dre? Like more
Yeah.
of
Well, I mean, previously it was when you were in the parks. There's always been a class model ever since the introduction of Club 33, for example, right?
And Magic Morning
in the 1960s. Well, yeah. Magic Mornings are a reflection of that, right? But it was always a little bit more transparent than the way it's being done now, right? When you see Phantasmic, right, and you see that viewing area, well, you can't see it right now because it's not going to be on until Labor Day. But, okay, so normally when you see that Phantasmic viewing area before showtime, and you just see large swaths of it, I mean, like 80% of it just roped off and saying, nope, you can't come here. There's a standby, which is 20% of this viewing area, let's say, only holds about if a couple hundred guests, and you're seeing thousands being reserved for either Hungry Bear dinner packages, Riverboat Terrace dinner packages, or Blue Bayou dinner packages. It's like, okay, can we do something like that that's a little bit more transparent and that's a little bit less invasive to the overall product for people who are just paying and wanting to see this included as part of their ticket price?
See, that's where my issue is. I feel like that if it's something that used to be included in something that was never a problem before, but then you start nickeling and diming people to say, oh, well, you paid $100 some for your ticket, but spend a little bit more at this restaurant and you could have this kind of seating to see Phantasmic, where, as you had mentioned, Dre, they block off 80% of it, and then they put everyone else crammed in the little corner right by Pirates. And it's like, that I can understand. Now, as far as just the tier system in general, I don't have a problem with it because it's almost like when you go to a concert, you could spend like hundreds of dollars for the front row seat. Why? Because you're right there smack dab in the front. If you're going to pay $25, you're going to be up in peanut heaven. That I can understand. But yeah, for me, if it's something that was already included with the ticket, that it wasn't a problem before, that to me is it kind of dilutes the notion as to why you're paying a premium price for that ticket, because it should be included with your ticket.
Well, and the thing with Phantasmic, for example, right? It's kind of, and I agree with you guys. I mean, it is kind of egregious how they do that whole thing with the seating and what have you. But that is sort of the gift and the curse in a lot of ways. It's the curse because it sucks. You got to pay to kind of play, right? And I totally get that. That sucks. But it's the gift in that because now the show is so monetized, it's gonna get more. It's more. It's kind of job security for Phantasmic, right? Oh, we're not going to, like when the Dragon caught fire and there were rumors, are they going to bring back Phantasmic? The consensus by the community was, of course they're going to bring it back. There's too much money in that show now, right? There's dining packages and the seating and all that. So it's like, yes, it's a pain in the ass, and yes, it sucks, but it also adds to the show in the respect of like, because now it's so heavily monetized, it incentivizes Disney to invest in the show. It incentivizes Disney to keep the show and not get rid of it because they are making so much money on it. Even things like the Dragon, right? Like if this show wasn't making money for Disney like it is now, if it wasn't heavily monetized, they're much more likely to kind of maybe cheap out with the Dragon, right? Whereas like now it's like, well, people pay money for this thing. It's a moneymaker for us. They're more inclined to spend that money. That's why you see a lot of times when we get like these big like these big renovations and things like that. Pixar Pier is a perfect example. There's a reason why the Incredicoaster looks the way it does. It looks like dog shit. Let's be honest. The budget fell out of that attraction when it got rethemed. There's a reason why that looks like that and Lamplight Lounge looks like that. Because Lamplight Lounge, there's a lot of money to be made over there with alcohol and food and yada, yada, yada. So they're going to put the money into it. It's the same idea with Phantasmic. The money is, they're making money hand over fist. So more money will go into it as well. More will be invested into it. And I get it, fandom. It sucks having to spend the money for the seating and the dining package, all that. But there is a benefit to it too. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, and this is what we will hear from upper management, middle management, et cetera, and how they will justify the decisions that they make on this thing. My I guess from my perspective, though, it's like, okay, yeah, like you don't spend money into, let's say in Credit Coaster, for example, and you spend money in Lamplight Lounge because you have direct revenue streams with one, maybe indirect with another. But it's like people are booking vacations, though, to go see in Credit Coaster, not to necessarily dine in Lamplight Lounge.
Right. No, I get that.
Yeah, you can extrapolate that out. They don't, unfortunately, the people making decisions don't think on that macro level. They think on the micro. And for Phantasmic, it's like that when you have 80% dedicated to this kind of upcharge viewing for that show, it does hurt the value for people who are just paying to enter into Disneyland that day. Because now the chances of you seeing that show have been reduced by 80%.
Now, with that notion, is that why they keep on pushing it back? Because now it's at Labor Day. Are they stalling time till or at least a form of the Dragon is back up and running? Because to give that premium price for those dining packages, no one on earth is going to pay for that and not have the full experience of the show.
It's probably a big part of it, I would think. Go ahead.
To have a Dragon even up by Labor Day, that's a big ask. I wouldn't.
Right, that's what I'm saying. But do you think that it's going to actually be the show is going to be up and running by Labor Day, or do you think they'll push it back more?
No, so it's hard to say right now. From what I am hearing, the show was pushed back not because of any loss to the Dragon necessarily. It was more about the critical infrastructure that lay below the Dragon that was damaged by not only the fire itself, but the fire suppression and fire retardant systems that they use to extinguish the flames. From what I understand, and I believe there have been some of our DM chats that we've had that kind of have illustrated that, no, look, there's critical infrastructure below the Dragon that was completely damaged, and you simply cannot operate the show at all on any level without that critical system infrastructure in place, and that takes time to come back. And I think that's why September is the day, or Labor Day is the date.
So Disney's actually going to still, I assume, continue on with the dining packages for Phantasmic, even though.
Yeah. I like, they're gonna. I mean, people will pay to see it even without the Dragon. Right. To what extent, George? That remains to be seen. We'll find out here. But can we? Look, I'm not even asking get rid of the dinner packages. They have had like dessert packages, for example, before, right? The balcony of the Disney Dream Suite, before it was known as kind of the Disney Gallery. They used to have dessert dining opportunities back there, and they've had that since the 90s, for example, right? So they have had premium experiences, mixed in with shows like Phantasmic. But think about World of Color, how they do it, right? When you get the drink package over there, it doesn't really take away from the experience of people who just want to go in the standby section and watch that show. Can we have something similar for Phantasmic, in which we don't have to dedicate 80% of the viewing area for just upcharge? That's kind of what I'm saying. A rebalance more than anything, and maybe less in your face about it.
And you would think Disney would kind of use that, because we're talking also about data. And when we looked at that space, it was completely empty. Yeah. So it's like, how many people are really utilizing those dining packages? So is the money even still worth the notion of saying, oh yeah, because, people will come for the dining packages? Well, obviously they're really not.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's another thing too. Can we make it variable to the point where we can adjust how much we dedicate based on how many people are actually booking that day? That's an idea. Go ahead.
Correct.
That'd be fair. And I think the reason why you're seeing this big, like, you constantly see Disney sort of saying we're kind of thinking about ways to add more magic to Phantasmic in the meantime. And I think there's a big push to make the show look as good as possible, because whatever solution they're going to give us after Labor Day will not be the permanent solution. The Dragon's going to take a real long time, but they have to make the show look good enough to incentivize people to buy those dining packages. That's the goal. It really is. So you can't have a janky ass looking show for a year. It has to be good enough. So that's part of the equation here, is that, they have to not only fix the stuff like Dre was talking about that was damaged, but they also have to make the show sellable enough to book packages, and without a dragon, that's harder. So that's why you're hearing them say we're going to have some new magic. They have to sell it with something new in the meantime. So we'll see.
As we will here. What is the next topic talk about? Well, we'll let it play.
Two. Yeah. Phil.
You've talked about, for me too, yeah.
That's right.
With Frozen. You've talked about the new lands that are being opened. You've got cruise ships being invested in. Talk about the capital
CapEx
that's available to invest in the parks and how you think about the marginal dollar and where that goes. The company has lowered capital investment guidance a couple times this year. And so how's that impacted your organization?
Yeah, in terms of the lower capital guidance, there's nothing material in our world that has changed in terms of what our ambitions are and what we've announced to the public in terms of new experiences.
That's interesting because that goes to the later point about, well, the $17 billion investment, right? He's saying right there, nothing's changed materially in our world that has, in which we're adjusting our ambitions and what we've announced and new experiences and so forth.
We have a pretty sophisticated CapEx deployment strategy. So we're always looking, number one, to make sure that we're adding capacity such that we can continue to grow these theme parks. And you've seen that in very recent days. For example, at Walt Disney World, we built a brand new attraction, Tron. And that adds capacity to the number one demanded theme park in the world and allows us to take volumes up inside of that theme park. And for that one attraction, you're seeing other attractions around the world. Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which is at Disneyland and Toontown, same thing. Incremental capacity for these parks that allows us to bring up the caps. And we'll look at that globally. We're also making sure that we're investing in technology the right way to improve the experience, to simplify the experience, to give us more commercial capabilities where it's appropriate. We invest heavily in our base product to make sure that it's always looking good for our fans so that Main Street always feels like Main Street. So we have, a pretty sophisticated approach to how we think about capital. And we're fortunate in that we have a very reasonable allocation from a Walt Disney Company perspective to continue to grow as we'd like to grow.
Pretty sophisticated way of allocating capital. Has it become too sophisticated? Because, we've seen maintenance be slipping at some of these parks, not just at Disneyland, but at Walt Disney World as well. In some areas, more especially felt than others. I'd be interested to see how they allocate capital in various ways in order to mitigate those, because I don't think they're necessarily doing enough right there. They talk about investing in technology to make this simpler. Yes, you can provide more tools, but man, your back-end infrastructure guys, come on. I mean, get some reasonable IT guys back in there and make these systems more reliable. That has got to be addressed. And to Josh's credit, he says that there's more work to be done in that area, which I agree with.
And to be fair, too, a lot of companies are going through that for some reason. Netflix recently had a big crash. On one of their premieres a few weeks ago. We saw the total shit show with Ron DeSantis and his Twitter space thing.
Twitter spaces, yeah.
I mean, Twitter is constantly now with Elon. It's constantly down, and there's glitches all over. So and that's a platform that's used by millions of people. I mean, Disney's got issues with this in this arena for sure. But I'm not 100% sure it's just like as easy as just like we'll get better people in there. I think that there is something to be said about like any company that has this much demand. We've seen it with Twitter. We've seen it with Netflix. We've seen it it's not just a Disney thing. We've seen it with Ticketmaster. We've seen it with all these online movie ticket things. So it seems like it's an issue.
So I don't know. I'll push back on that a little bit, right? Because Netflix, you're talking about terabytes worth of information. Being maybe even petabytes worth of information being scattered out amongst how many million users in the United States. What we're talking about, like 100 million users or something like that, 50 to 100 million users in the United States for a premiere or something like that. That's very, very difficult to service. You're talking about audio over like a Twitter space, for example. It's never been used to that extent. I can see why that would deteriorate, right? But Disney's been in this business for a long, long time. And how long, George, have they been dealing with this issue? And this is the thing. This is not video streaming, right? Where, like I said, that's terabytes of information being distributed out there. This isn't even audio streaming, which is still, gigabytes worth of information. These are requests that are bite-sized small, and only on the scale of maybe 60,000 per day per park, right? And yet they're still having these problems. So I think the scales are much, much different. And unfortunately, the Disney Parks product has failed to incorporate a strategy that deals with this demand even, years after debuting some of these systems.
Yep, interesting. Let's continue.
All right.
And can the U.S. parks grow in terms of footprint? Do you need to optimize the footprint that you have? Or are you sort of built out spatially?
Well, I think this is it's an interesting question. The answer is both. We have plenty of opportunity within these existing footprints to optimize, to find ways to increase capacity of existing attractions. And we have space within what we'll call the berm. Tron is a good example of that, to build additional capacity in. That said, and this is sometimes a misconception, we have plenty of opportunity outside of the berms of those theme parks to continue to grow pretty aggressively at Walt Disney World, at the Magic Kingdom, at Disneyland. So Disneyland, Walt in 1955 sets up this place. Had he known, he probably would have acquired a lot more land. But even so, even in Disneyland, and you may have seen some coverage on this, we have a project in place called Disneyland Forward, which allows us to look at our entitlements and significantly increase the footprint from a capacity and attractions perspective. So that's underway right now. So we have both internal opportunities to grow capacity and create new experiences, and opportunities outside of the berm to essentially expand the size of these theme parks.
They're really pushing Disneyland
They're
forward.
pushing Disneyland forward. I was just going to say, it's funny how he was talking about Walt Disney World, and it just kind of like switched within like seconds into mentioning Disneyland into Disneyland Forward. It was like, right. Yeah, we can do this at Walt Disney World. We can. But then he specifically mentioned Disneyland Forward.
I think they're more interested in Disneyland right now for a number of reasons. Number one, because Florida's become an issue. And I know a lot of conservatives, they'll say well, they're going to invest in Florida, that they have to. And that's true. But right now, though, there's no, they don't want to do it when he's there. You know what I'm saying? Because it's an issue with his board. They don't know what they're going to be up against. There's all kinds of lawsuits. Everything's tied up in court. They'd rather put a pause on that. And at least for the next 3 or so years, focus on Disneyland, which is a lot less hostile over there in Anaheim. I never thought I would say that in my lifetime, but it is. And I think there's less hurdles there. There's less barriers to entry, so to speak, to invest over in Anaheim. So that's why they're very bullish on that. And I think it's, I think that this Disneyland Forward thing is, I would give it a high likelihood of approval. They're talking like it's already approved. I mean, the way they're talking, it sounds like they kind of know. So we'll see.
I think they're getting back from the city that it is likely to be approved. And we'll go into the Florida thing in a moment. But it is interesting, right? So we talked about it before, OG, about the growth potential of Walt Disney World and maybe adding a fifth gate, right? And would that increase the length of stay for guests? Would that increase visitation overall? Or would that necessarily just cannibalize your other parks? Right?
Cannibalize. It would definitely cannibalize.
Exactly, right? Especially at where the level that they're at right now with some of these other parks like Animal Kingdom and Disney's Hollywood Studios, for example, right? But when you look at Disneyland and the prospect of adding a third gate, okay, that's much more wide open, right? That's not, you're not cannibalizing anything at that point. You're simply adding to the demand that's already there, the capacity that's already there, and you're increasing demand for that new product. That's why I think they're bullish on that, just from strategy, not even talking about the political climate as it exists in Florida, right? But then when you add in all those other things, that's why they're bullish out there in California. Now, you just talk about how they can expand the borders of some of these parks, Disneyland, for example, via Disneyland Forward, or Magic Kingdom beyond Big Thunder and that kind of thing. But that's, I think, what he's talking about right there. Sorry, go ahead, OG.
Yeah, no, it's the growth potential, and a lot of people don't get it. You talk to people on Twitter, and you're like, it makes more sense to add another gate to Disneyland or expand Disneyland Resort than it does Disney World, because of the growth potential. And they're like, what do you mean growth potential? Well, if Florida is so much bigger and this, that, and the other, it's like, it's not about the physical size. It's about how many hotel rooms, how much occupancy can we add? The percentages matter. You know what I'm saying? Yes. And people don't understand that. When you do a fifth gate in Walt Disney World, you will absolutely cannibalize that. They even Animal Kingdom cannibalized. I can guarantee you right now, Epic Universe will cannibalize the other two parks to some degree. To what degree?
Or at least at least the studios. It's definitely the studios.
It's a half-day park, and you're adding a brand new shiny object down the street. Of course, it's going to cannibalize it. So it makes more sense at Disneyland Resort, 100%. And I stand by my prediction. I think we will get a third gate here before Florida gets a fifth gate. I don't even know if Florida ever will get a fifth gate, to be honest with you.
I seriously doubt it. Honestly, I see Disneyland getting a third gate and DCA getting a massive expansion way before a fifth gate at Walt Disney World, because we're still going to be anticipating on an expansion for Animal Kingdom and Hollywood Studios, even way before that.
And how long can people spend on vacation, realistically? How many days are they going to have to spend on vacation with 5 Walt Disney World parks, 3 Universal parks, not even including the water parks? It becomes too much. Go ahead, Dre.
Unless the dynamic completely changes within C-suite, and especially on the DPEP front, you're just not going to see a fifth gate in Walt Disney World, okay? Bob Iger's made it very clear, even back in 2007, 2008, that they're just not looking at this point to invest in a new gate when it comes to Walt Disney World. They're more interested in increasing the capacity of the parks they currently have. And honestly, that's probably
and they need to.
The right,
they need to.
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
the right move to make. It's the right move to make. And until such and such time that they kind of build out these parks even more, specifically Disney Hollywood Studios and Animal Kingdom, then we can kind of look at, okay, can we increase this even further? But for right now, that's just going to be how it is. Whereas Disneyland, they have to, both parks right now book out on a regular interval, even at this point. Can't say that at Walt Disney World right now.
And honestly, if you think about it this too, Dre, what did you say earlier in the video? Disneyland, look at how many restaurants. So to add another third gate to Disneyland, that may open up more opportunities for dining.
Absolutely. 100%. And the Disneyland Resort needs it. From what I understand, though, I guess Dave from Fresh Baked is talking about Steakhouse 55 coming back and maybe a new restaurant being added online with the DVC Tower. So that
well, we just heard today, actually, I don't know if you heard the news about the Pixar Place Hotel, that new restaurant opening over at Pixar Place. They just announced, I think it's called the Great Maple, if I'm not mistaken. It's a chain. It's not, but it looked really nice. But there's a new one coming up. I know that the Paradise Pier Hotel stuff has been shuttered for years, from what I understand. I've never stayed there, but
it has. It's been shuttered ever since the pandemic. And none of that stuff has come online, at least from what I know. So that tells you that there are pursuits in these parks, maybe a little bit more strategic than just, third gate or whatever. But there are pursuits in these parks that they can, better exploit, better leverage, and they're going to be pursuing that. But overall, the growth potential in Disneyland is really untapped now. They even said only 50% of the land that we currently can utilize for theme park space has actually been pursued. It's crazy to think about, but.
And I'm just telling you right now, if anyone at Disney is by any chance watching this, I know that the Westcott plans have been shelved, right? I am telling you right now, Disney, if you were to build a World Showcase style park, you don't need the Future World part of it. Just do that, like what you were going to do with Westcott, like that World Showcase featuring the continents, or even if you just do a World Showcase with different countries, whatever it is. I am telling you right now, that will be the most successful thing you've ever done here in Anaheim. Absolutely. The locals, the Magic Key holders with that drink around the world stuff, that would be such a money, that would be a mint for you guys. And look, put your IP in there. If you need to throw a bunch of tangled and frozen in the Europe area, and you got to put Mulan and Big Hero 6 in Asia. I don't care. No one cares. Just put that park in there with the IP, do your drink around the world stuff. You will make money, buckets and buckets of money out here.
And you were very bullish on that from the very get-go, OG. I mean, like that was always your that was your baby without it being a baby before it became a third park.
I know. I wish they would do it, but we'll see if they ever do. I doubt it, but it would be a smart move. Go ahead, Dre.
What is more recession resistant right now? What has more limited risk? It's Disneyland, because of that local population that will support these things in down times and in good times. Right. So that's kind of the equation that's being played out here on a massive scale. It's quite interesting. Talks about IP next.
Let's do it.
Is there new IP coming from either that you could create yourself or coming from the film side that you're excited about sort of bringing into the parks?
Yeah, listen, our content folks are unbelievable in terms of churning out new, compelling intellectual property. And every time they do that, we take advantage of it. I think a great example of that is, Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios and what they're doing with the Marvel franchise and the stories that keep coming out on that front. It gives us an opportunity to tell those stories in real form. We opened Avengers Campus at Disneyland just after the pandemic. We just did that in Disneyland Paris as well. And that brings a completely new consumer set into our parks and continues to entertain people. And then across the storytelling spectrum on the entertainment side, there's so much coming. Star Wars, keeps coming up with new stories, and that gives us more opportunities to tell these stories inside of the theme parks. The thing is, even though we have this brand new content that keeps coming at us and we think of ways to bring it to life in the parks, you can go all the way back to Mickey Mouse. And I just mentioned a second ago, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which we opened at Walt Disney World and just recently at Disneyland. This is the first Mickey themed ride through attraction. So this is IP that is still incredibly relevant today, and our guests rate it highly. So the portfolio of intellectual property that we have, both new and existing, is incredibly powerful.
Well, from there, I think they're going to be investing in more original attractions. Is that?
Yeah, right. I'm sure.
That's what it's. Yeah.
Yeah. No, they're not. But this is the thing too, and this is the massive advantage Disney has in this space, because any big company can write a check and make a theme park. I mean, really, they can. If you have enough money, Apple could build a theme park. They could, any company with enough money can do it, and you can make it look nice. But Disney's a very different animal, though, because of their IP. These stories, these characters, these films are a very emotional thing for a lot of people. I'm sorry, it's an emotional thing that a lot of the Universal stuff doesn't have. It just doesn't, and that's what separates. And Josh is right with that. That's what separates Disney from this other stuff. It's different when your kid first meets Mickey than when he's meeting SpongeBob on an ATV rolling around Universal. It's not the same shit, y'all. It's not the same thing. There's a special moment there when your little girl meets Cinderella, or it's just there is a level of magic and this specialness there that it just can't be duplicated anywhere else, and it hasn't been yet, in my opinion.
And that right there, OG, is what worries me most about the future of the Walt Disney Company right there. Because you hear Josh Duhamel talk about how, we have so many great storytellers that bring so much in terms of intellectual property to the studio. And there you go.
Yep, there we go. Speaking of Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway.
Real quick, Dre, we'll let you do it. It's a tradition when the train goes by.
Oh no! I must have hit that track switch!
There we go. Continues.
You gotta do it.
You got it.
But Josh Duhamel talked about how they have amazing storytellers creating new IP for them, right? And then they can utilize them in the parks. The fact of the matter is, though, at least recently, that has been really hindered. And look, you can see this in multiple ways, right? So you have the Little Mermaid coming out. What's the Little Mermaid tracking in right now?
At 120 million, I think, opening weekend, around there.
120 million opening weekend.
Yeah.
And it's over a 4-day weekend, right? The Memorial Day weekend. Is that right?
Correct.
Or 3-day?
Yes.
3-day. 3-day weekend.
3-day.
3-day. Right. Okay.
Beating Flash, by the way. I was surprised, but Flash is tracking right now at 75. I was shocked to hear it was that low.
I was shocked to hear that as well. We all kind of predicted, though, OG, that it was going to have some problems, especially with, Ezra Miller and that whole situation.
Yeah.
Right? We'll see if it has
We'll
legs.
see. Yeah.
We'll see. But 120 million frame for Little Mermaid. Remember, in 2017, around a similar frame, Beauty and the Beast debuts at more than $300 million worldwide.
But do you think we're in the same environment, though, in the box office, though? I mean, I think it is a little bit industry-wide different.
The box
People
office
like
price
that at home.
The box office price has increased by 30%. And we've seen that, movies in this space, especially family entertainment, can bring people out. Look at Mario.
Oh yeah, no, Mario has, but I do think the industry has changed. There is a segment of and a significant segment, I think viewing habits have changed to some degree since 2016, 2017. Streaming is a lot bigger now.
I don't necessarily believe that's not the case, but it has been shown over and over again, even in this space right now, when you consider Avatar, when you consider Maverick, when you consider some of these other films, that people will go if the product is good enough. And I'm sorry, but people aren't necessarily going to Disney product as it exists right now. Look at Quantum Mania. Look at the long range view for Dial of Destiny. Look at Elemental.
Yeah.
That's what worries me the most about the Walt Disney Company is when you have these franchises coming out that aren't resonating, what does that do for your product lines that rely on those IPs to do well? Go ahead.
And I think that's why, because I'm going to get flack for this, but it's like because a lot of these films are tied to a certain, specific agenda. And when you kind of heavily rely on that as your core storyline, people don't want to go into a movie. Yes, you get a life lesson out of it. You might find some relatable aspects to a character that you can relate with, but people don't want to go into a theater or movie-going experience to have it. Exactly. Yes, they want to be entertained. They want to go in and enjoy a movie, and I think that's where, if you actually look at movies moving forward, not even just with Disney, but just in general, moving up the pipeline from the 50s and the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, moving forward up to today's time, you can see a difference. I mean, it slaps you right in the face. And it's like, it has nothing to do with whether you agree with one side or the other. It's just, don't force it down people's throats, especially primarily when you're dealing with family entertainment.
Well, and I agree with you, George, and I do think there is a shift in that. I mean, we've heard Iger talk about in the quarterly earnings that he understands the various comfort levels with families and what have you, and they're aware of it. And and a lot of people are, and this is where I'm going to get flagged, George. This is where I'm going to get flagged. But I think, in my opinion, the way they've marketed Little Mermaid is vastly different than the way they've marketed other identity politics films. Like, for example, Captain Marvel. The marketing for Captain Marvel was all about her being a woman. The whole marketing thing was all about her being a woman. That's it. I mean, literally, that was what it was. The whole thing. It's not that way with Little Mermaid. I know a lot of people are upset because they race swapped, and I get that, whatever, but that's not the marketing, though. They're marketing Halle Bailey as a wonderful young lady, talented voice. This is magical movie. It's typical movie marketing. They're not pushing the, she's African American, this, that, and the other. They're not pushing it like they were with Captain Marvel a few years ago. I do think there has been a shift. We've even seen it recently with like Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny. That first trailer comes out, or the second trailer, I'm not sure. The capitalism joke, they've cut that joke out of the newest material and the newest teaser. So I think there is an effort by Disney to sort of rein this stuff in. Now, look, it's not going to be enough for some people. I mean, fact is, this is not. I mean, and the reality is, Disney's not going to be the Daily Wire. It's never going to be that. But they are trying to moderate, in my opinion. But go ahead, Dre.
Oh, George, go ahead.
Really quick. The only thing with The Little Mermaid that, yes, I do agree with you, that they kind of stayed away from the changing of the race of the character and what have you. However, they have been very big on the changing of some of the lyrics to the songs, and then they actually made that known, even with Alan Menken and Jodie Benson themselves. that they kind of said, you know what, oh, this is something that needed to be done and changed. And the other thing is pushing Ariel to the sense of saying that she has a bigger
goal in mind,
than just
doing it for
exactly for Prince Eric.
I've seen that too.
Yes,
but that was the goal. Yeah, and that was where like that they lost me on that too. I mean, I agree because she had a bigger goal in the original movie. It wasn't all about Eric. She loved the land, the people on land or whatever. Way before she came across Eric. Eric was just kind of like the catalyst that pushed her over the edge, so to speak, to really motivate her. But she was already into it before that, you know.
Thankfully, the promotion hasn't revolved around the identity politics.
It has a
whole portion of it, right? Yeah. And they're using more of a merit-based argument when justifying Halle Bailey, right? I hear this from everybody. Oh, she was made to play this role. You know, she does this so well. It's like, okay, she was uniquely suitable for this role outside of any, race attached to her, and that's why she was chosen. It was a good selection. That's what you're hearing out there. I think that's a much more palatable way of doing that. I do agree with George, though. There are some other things that they're pushing,
of course,
whatever. But
it hasn't completely gone away. No, but I think they have pulled it back. You know,
I'll say this: it's look, Disney's not necessarily in a bubble, right? It has to work in this kind of ever-changing, ever-evolving marketplace, right? And what have we been hearing out of that marketplace? Well, look at Bud Light, right? Look at some of the things happening in that space. That really took a lot of people by surprise. Look at Target recently, right? I think they were valued at 160, I believe, was their stock, and now they're at 140, and that's going from May 17th to now. You know, we have seen some cancellation campaigns out there from distinct areas of the political spectrum. And I think Disney is well aware of that. It's interesting. Yeah. I was listening to Kevin O'Leary, of all people, Mr. Wonderful, right? It's okay. Not maybe the greatest person to listen to when we're talking about finance or investments. However, he did say something interesting and poignant and profound, right? He says, look, if you cater to a distinct segment of the market and you isolate maybe as much as 50% of the marketplace, right? You're going to piss off 50% of the marketplace 100% of the time if you do that. Right. So it doesn't make sense to necessarily, target a campaign that is necessarily that could result in negativity for your other, portions of your demo for your product.
Right.
And I think Disney is starting to consider that more so than they have been in the past.
I think
not just because of instance that they've personally experienced, but others in the marketplace. And I think that's a smart thing to do.
Well, and I mean, just imagine, and I know it's Brie Larson, but I mean, just look at the whole thing with Captain Marvel and Brie Larson back a few years ago about, this isn't made for you and yada yada yada, right? And it's like. And look, I'm sure she had the best of intentions when she said that. I don't think it was like malicious or whatever, but like when you're trying to sell something and you're out there saying stuff like that, to your point, Ray, you're excluding people, right? And I feel like this mermaid thing isn't about like, if you're white, it's not for you. I'm not hearing that. I'm not hearing that this isn't like, look, I'm a white guy. I've loved hip hop my whole life and R&B, and that's heavily dominated, by the Black community or whatever, and I've always loved it, so I think that there's crossover appeal. Like, I can be a white guy and really respect and love what Halle Bailey does with her music and her acting and what have you, as long as they're not going out there and saying, look, this isn't for you because you're a 40-year-old white guy or something, then I think they're good. I mean, just her being Black doesn't mean I'm not going to be into it.
It's all in the paraverbals. It's basically not what you say. It's how it's being said and how it's being represented.
The way you sell it, yeah. And I think they're selling this much better than they have in the past, but we'll see. And still, they're not perfect. Like you said, George, like the lyrics and stuff, it's like, come on, that was.
And I'll find out Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, you will. You're going to see it. We'll do we'll do like a review or a talk about it, but we've digressed a lot. Let's go ahead and continue with Daddy Josh.
You're on mute, brother.
You're on mute, brother. You're on mute.
You're on mute.
I do. Okay. I saw that. So I'm gonna let this play on a little bit longer,
Okay.
because there's literally the next point is where we want to get to, right? So with
Okay.
limited time, let's just let this play here. I can't skip ahead, so here we go.
Let's do it.
Talk a little bit about the costs of running the business. There's been a big cost-cutting program across Disney. I know you did a lot during COVID to sort of fix the cost structure, but maybe talk about what you did during COVID within the DPEP organization, and then what incremental can be done now on just the cost side of the company.
Yeah, so as we went into our challenging period with COVID, these theme parks, they're operating 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And so when you come to a point where the businesses stop, we stopped for a moment and started to significantly retool where we could from a cost perspective, a commercial standpoint, as we talked about a little bit earlier. And we looked really hard at our cost base and asked ourselves, how can we make sure that we deliver a guest experience that we can stand behind and are proud, but at the same time, think about where we are and what's relevant today and what costs are actually appropriate for that experience that we want to deliver. So we made some pretty significant changes in our cost base. And listen, as I said before, my team at DPEP is incredibly strong and precise in the way that they're managing these businesses, and we're always looking for opportunities to continue to deliver a great experience, but do it more efficiently, because the more efficiently we do it, the more growth we should expect in the future, and obviously the better the margins get over time. Bob announced the $5.5 billion, which I think the world generally understands and knows about. I'm participating in that as well. What I will not do is cut any labor from the front line. I want to make sure that our frontline cast members continue to service our guests and create that true Disney difference. But there are opportunities for us to continue to look at using technology in a more progressive way to save costs, to simplify the guest experience and save costs along the way, et cetera. So this is a mission that will always be on, and again, balanced against making sure that we deliver the experience that our guests expect.
Interesting. Not going to cut frontline cast members. It's good to hear.
Yes.
But he does say that there are opportunities to use technology and streamline the business that way. It's interesting because Six Flags, I think, just debuted some kind of cast member list or team member list kiosks for certain items like food, for example, right? We've seen that, like, let's say at McDonald's and some of the other kind of big fast food chains in order to keep costs down. But to see that at the kind of the parks level is very interesting. Now, he's saying that they're not going to eliminate frontline cast members in order to,
Right,
but,
so that would make, for me, that tells me that he wouldn't eliminate them, but if it was to new technology that may replace something of them, that they would position them in another role, so to speak. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting thing. Or maybe you see like a new store, for example, or new restaurant debut with this technology already in place, right? So you haven't necessarily limited anybody, you just eliminated positions that you would have otherwise hired on. It's very interesting. It's changing time here. Here we go.
As you think about the cost reduction, I usually think of, if you want to reduce costs on it from a technology basis, you need to invest more. And yet capital has been sort of coming down as well. Is the capital already in place? We've talked about the technology going into the parks. How should we think about that incremental dollar of cost coming out and where that might be?
I'll go back to what I was saying a little bit earlier. The way that we think about our capital allocation strategy is pretty sophisticated. And to your point, one of our objectives will always be to operate as efficiently as we can. And so from a technology perspective, you will see an incremental investment from a tech perspective, which will allow us to streamline our processes, get better information in so that we can program our experiences more efficiently than we have before. So there has been an increase in technology costs, but that comes with the benefit ultimately of being more efficient and productive from a cost perspective.
Okay. So
Let's switch
it's basically where they're at there. Here's where we want to get to.
gears and talk about Florida, where there's been a lot going on lately in the headlines. Talk about to the extent that you can, has it impacted how you run your business, impacted the operations of the park at this point?
Okay, so now keep this in mind, guys. We have a war, right, with Disney, and the government of Florida, right? We have a legal battle taking place right now, and we have a unified front, let's say, that the company wants to establish to suggest that, look, what they are going through has impacted their business, will continue to impact their business, and, you know, to the extent that it does, well, they're looking for legal remedy or relief, injunctive relief, in order to prevent this from going on further or preventing this from impacting their business on an ongoing basis, right? And maybe, you know, even get some remedy there.
Can't imagine something so small as this would make headlines.
Right, exactly. This is what Josh says about that.
It has not. Again, as you've seen in our results, the progress that we've made coming out of COVID has been exceptionally strong. So some of the things that are happening, and I assume you mean from a political perspective, et cetera, some of the things that have been taking place have not impacted our business results.
Yeah, okay.
Has it impacted how you run your business, and has it impacted your operations of the park at this point? Josh says it has not. Why on earth would Josh say that?
Man.
Well, because and Dre, and to Dre's credit, he brought this up to me on the phone the other night, and absolutely brilliant. Because the whole thing, and you're like you said, Dre, a united front. The whole thing has been we're being kind of like oppressed out here in Florida. Like Bob Iger's like, we can't do. It's harder to do business out here. Yada yada yada. That's the leverage that Bob Iger and
that one line that Josh said just threw everything that Iger said right out the door.
Right, exactly. And here's the problem for Josh. And Josh, if you're watching, this is constructive criticism. You got to walk this back, brother. Like, because this could definitely impact not just like your chances of becoming the next CEO, but even your job. I mean,
look what happened with Chapek.
Well, yeah, but what happens if DeSantis? What if his team, his legal team, cites Josh's comments in the lawsuit? What if they amend it and they cite specifically what he says in the lawsuit? If they do that, I'm telling you right now, Josh's job is on the line, big time. Absolute big time. He really shit the bed on this one. He really, really did. Iger is not a happy camper. I'm sure of it. And that's why I don't think Josh had a chance as I know he's on the short list to be CEO. You know, he's top 5 on there for sure. He's going to the Oscars and all this stuff, but I don't think he has any real chance. Though I think they want a studio person. I don't think that Disney wants to have issues with Wall Street and the Hollywood whatever community with another parks person. They didn't like the last parks person. I know Josh is his own man, but there is a bad taste.
But look at the consistency of that. So you had a parks chairman who became CEO, opened his mouth where he shouldn't have. Give it to the fact of he had his PR team jumping down his throat about that as well, to his credit. But still, as the CEO, you still have to withhold of how much you say and what you say, and then it's going to go right back to this pinpoint, and he's only the parks chairman. So now they could be looking at him, if he really was CEO and he would say something like this, then it's the Chapek era spiraling all over again.
That's the thing. That's the problem, is that Iger understands leverage. He understands how to sell something. And that's why I tell people when you're hearing these sound bites from Brian Roberts and from Bob Iger, both of these guys are very smart. Both of these guys know how to sell and play poker. Do not take what they're saying publicly at face value. They are saying things to sell to the other guy. Okay. Don't take it at face value. Daddy Josh doesn't seem ready for prime time. He seems like DeSantis. I got to be honest with you. He seems like he is not ready for it. He is just not. And this move was a rookie move that's going to probably cost him the CEO position. I'm telling you right now, and maybe even his job, depending on how far this goes. What do you think, Dre?
I concur with all of that, and I've stated some of that to you guys privately.
Yeah.
You know, I think this was a real test for for Daddy Josh and his prospects of being CEO, right? Hey, let's let this guy get in front of this kind of a big investment conference right here, talking to people who are investing in the company, right? Let's see how he represents his division, how it relates to the kind of the broader Walt Disney Company. Let's give him some questions and let's see how he responds in that moment. And I think he's been doing pretty okay this so far. Right. I think he screwed up right here in a big way.
Big time.
For the reasons that you say, right? Like I said before, this is a Iger wants a unified front from the Walt Disney Company, a unified message, right? The unified message being that these things have impacted their operation at Walt Disney World and will continue to upset operations or impact operations as it relates to Walt Disney World, the larger Reedy Creek area, and so forth, right? Him saying it has not, I could see why he said it too, because it's like you're talking to investors. You don't want to necessarily put anything out there that could lower the stock, right? But that's the only thing that was in his head right there.
He wasn't.
And he should have included, we also are in a legal fight, and I had to back up CEO Bob Iger in his thoughts about this in order so that we do create this kind of unified front from the company's position, right? Instead, what does he do? He concedes the point. It hasn't. No, it's fine. It's all good. Because he's thinking, well,
because you look at that at all levels. It makes Iger look like an ass.
Exactly.
It puts the company more in jeopardy of the lawsuit. It gives leverage for DeSantis to have something on them. It's like, which way was this in his mind that was a good idea to say?
Because the basis of their complaint is this is impacting us, and this is, this is hurting our First Amendment rights, and this is prejudicial, and all these things, right? That's the whole lawsuit is predicated on how it's going to impact their business. Now this is Josh saying it's not impact their business at all. So why wouldn't DeSantis pursue this, amend their filing, and say, well, we haven't impacted their business at all? Look at their head of their DPAP or Disney Parks and Experiences.
So they're going to be like, why?
Saying.
And that's where he could actually say, so why are they suing me? Everything's all well and dandy. They might as well can just... that's
exactly. A big... Why do they need injunctive relief?
Shut up, George.
From what? We haven't done anything.
It's like, shut up, George.
He didn't think it through.
I could say so much more. Just shut up, George.
This is exactly why this guy should never be CEO. I'm sorry. Nothing against him as a person. He seems like a really nice guy. He is not ready for prime time. I have not been happy with how he's run the parks, to be honest with you.
I haven't either.
And this shows you he does not have the street smart, so to speak, as they call it, to navigate these corporate and legal waters like Bob Iger. Bob Iger is a Jedi master with this shit.
He's a shark. He's a shark.
He's playing all kinds of chess. Okay. This guy, he's playing just checkers. I mean, that was so bad. That was Chapek level, foot in mouth, shit the bed moment.
You have to know the broader context of the situation. You're not just talking to investors. You're talking on a subject as part of this ongoing dispute right here. So what you say might impact that dispute. And to not have that broader context in mind, man, I mean, this just shows you he is not ready for prime time. He's not ready for the CEO position. And to be honest, he might be over his skis even in his current position.
I was just going to say, honestly, I don't even think he's good. I'm sorry. Forgive me, Josh. I'm sorry. As a person, you could be a great guy.
Sure he is.
But of what you just said, Dre, not qualified for CEO. I don't think he's qualified to even be the parks chairman right now, honestly.
No, that was bad. Now, Dre, if you could please, I sent you a link in the PMs in the private message. This plays to what we're talking about right now.
Okay.
In that this was an interview. I don't even know if you fellas saw this, but you guys remembered Mayer?
Kevin Meyer,
Kevin Meyer. He was interviewed. Share your screen. There we go. He was interviewed on CNBC about, would you accept the role of Disney CEO if they asked you? Now, he does a whole dance. He's tiptoeing and dancing and he's doing the two-step the whole time. At the very end, he kind of slips though. So let's play the whole thing. We'll talk about it.
Cool.
Bob Iger is back for like the third time. I've got to imagine that, his half-life is probably shorter. He wants to go sail on his boat or do whatever. If you were offered the CEO job at Disney, would you take it?
That's a very direct question. Look, I was at Disney for 27 years, and I have great things going on in my professional life right now. Candle Media, which is a modern media company backed by Blackstone and Blackstone's limited partners, is doing really well. I feel like I have a lot more to do here at Candle, and I'm also a partner at Smash Capital, which is a growth equity fund. And I'm enjoying my life. I'm enjoying my professional career. Disney is a very alluring. If they were to so I have no direct answer to that. Actually.
Okay, now wasn't that interesting? So the whole time,
That's interesting.
the whole time, he's like, oh well, well, I'm doing great things right now. I'm CEO of this. I'm with that and the other. At the very end, oh, actually, that is pretty alluring. Oh well,
yeah. Well, I can't say anything. Can't say anything. That was slip of the tongue there, Kevin. Slip of the tongue there.
A little alluring, Kev. A little alluring. Hey, you know what? I like Kevin Meyer. I really do. I've always liked him. Now, for those of you at home that are not aware, he was kind of Iger's right hand man with all the acquisitions, all the successful acquisitions that Iger did, which basically built his legacy. This guy was in the room with him with all of them. He helped launch Disney Plus, which was very successful in the opening couple years. The launch was very successful. He knows what he's doing. Now, he went to TikTok and he didn't do so great over there, but he joined Candle Media or whatever with Tom Staggs. He's been very, very successful.
Speaking of Tom Staggs, I mean, I don't think he will, but I'm just saying there's someone who knew how to run as chairman of parks. There is someone that would have been the perfect CEO for the Walt Disney Company. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I will always stand by it. That Tom Staggs, I felt he got the short end of the stick with that between him and what went on down with the board.
Yeah.
He did. No, Tom Staggs was a gem that they let go and they shouldn't have.
Ike Promoter had something to do with that, but now that chapter has been closed as well. It is fascinating where we find ourselves, how we've wound up in this situation, right? Look, Iger's looking at CEO prospects right now, and I think he's going to be testing them in various ways as they move forward here. For example, Josh DiMauro tested on the red carpet with the Oscars, right? A place in which he isn't necessarily been associated with before, right? Let's see how he does in this situation, or let's see how Dana Walden does, behind me when walking through the parks, right? And assessing their different assets in their portfolio when it comes to the Parks division. Right. And I think he's testing him these kind of ways. Kristen Waisons McCarthy even just attended one of these conferences. Now, I'm not saying that she's in that top 5 category, but it's like, okay, let's see how she does on her own. And I think similarly with Josh DiMauro here, let's see how he does on his own. And unfortunately, I think in this very key aspect right here, I think he shit the bed, to be honest with you. He needed to stand beside Iger. Unfortunately, he undercut him and his arguments and the arguments that they might even include in court.
I don't know. I mean, you both used the term "he shit the bed." I don't know. I'll take it one step further. I think he shit in the sink and used it for a face wash.
Oh man, that's horrible, bro.
That is where is my camera?
Yes, folks, we only have high class stuff on this show.
Oh man, that's horrible. Now, yeah, go ahead, Dre. I'm sorry. You were going to say something.
It's been tough. This is. I think this was the wrong move to have made here.
I'm sorry, I broke myself. Sorry.
It's too funny. Now, I wanted to ask you, Dre. Do we have more? Okay, well, maybe I'll share this now. I'm very curious your guys' thought on this. I actually found this today. There's another thing I found today. It's an old interview with Michael Eisner, but it's
yes. It's going around. It is worth talking about.
Let's do this because it is relevant to like what we're seeing. I think with today's Disney, I'll send it to you. There's audio on it, so I can't play it.
I got it. I got you right here.
Perfect.
Here we go.
All right.
Okay. We'll get back to Josh in a second, but we'll
get back to Josh in a second. But this is interesting because it is actually related to like the Reedy Creek stuff, because the whole Reedy Creek thing, and even like what we're talking about earlier with like Little Mermaid and all this kind of identity politics or getting into politics and all this other stuff. This is an interview with Michael Eisner back in like 93. Let's play it, Dre, and then we'll talk about it. There's a lot to chew on with this thing. Oh my God.
There is. Here we go.
Gay rights for your employees, benefits for couples.
Well, we felt that it was fair and appropriate to give health insurance to people who are either married heterosexually or who have been living together for a sufficiently long time in the homosexual world to be dependent upon one another. And instead of putting the insurance risk on the state in which the person lives or the federal government, we felt it was our obligation for our employees to be able to insure their significant others if there's a long-time real relationship. This obviously has upset some groups. I think it's the right thing to do. I knew when we did it that it would be a volatile issue. It has been done in corporate America by about 30%, I think, of the companies, amongst them the biggest and most respected companies. We are obviously, because we're well known, a lightning rod for that kind of thing. And some very fundamentalist groups have taken exception to that.
Boycotts haven't hurt you.
I don't like being boycotted. I don't mind being boycotted for something that I think we did that was correct. Okay. I would hate to have made a big mistake and then been boycotted, because then I've made the mistake. I think they have the right. By the way, it is the American way. They have a right to call for a boycott.
Right.
The people that they called to boycott also have a right not to follow.
Competition.
Okay, now real quick, I want to say a few things. I'll take it to you, Dre, and then we'll go down to George. But this is the thing, and a lot of people are going to be like, well, what's the big deal, giving insurance to gay couples, right? You got to understand, though, this was 1993. This was an extremely progressive, controversial thing for this time. Michael Eisner sounds like Bob Iger here, talking Reedy Creek. Oh, we did the right thing. If you boycott it, we don't care because we did the right thing. And that's what this is the thing. When I saw this, I was like, wow, because the narrative right now is, wow, Disney's gotten into politics and they've really ruined themselves recently. To be honest, and I've been saying this in many, many videos with Michael Eisner, we've seen him years ago, 30 years ago, do this kind of stuff, change Pirates of the Caribbean to make it more PC, all these various changes, stuff like this. The politics has been at Disney for a very, very long time. Just because right now we have YouTube and creators
social media.
Yeah, social media and what have you talking about it 24/7 doesn't mean it didn't exist back then. This could easily, you could if you did a voice change on Michael Eisner, I would think that was Bob Iger talking. I mean, every talking point. Go ahead, Ray. I know you probably disagree with me.
Well, no. Okay. Hey, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Okay. The company utilizing its own resources in order to support its employees, even though what they're supporting is maybe controversial at the time, right? Is very, very different than attempting to change legislation that was passed via Florida's government. And it not just affecting their business, as Iger has said that it does, but it affects people's children. That's a very, very different thing. So, for example, right, even in the modern context, remember we had the overturning of Roe, right, recently that occurred, I believe, last summer, right? And the company put it out there saying that they were going to support their employees who wanted those services, even in states that forbade them, right? You guys know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. And that they were going to support them in paying for their travel to states in which they could partake in those services, right? Where was the backlash for that? Now, there was backlash, but isn't as extensive as what they've experienced in Florida.
No, it hasn't.
No.
Because it's the company utilizing its own resources to support its employees in the way that it wants to. Just like Michael Eisner is saying here. When you extrapolate that out and include the public arena with legislation that had already been passed by a duly elected of Tallahassee Congress right there, that's a much different issue, especially as it related to kids, and it did.
Yeah, but the Reedy Creek thing too is just one element, though. Because what about the money that Disney uses on their own movies that people are complaining about that are to this and to that? I mean,
they I think Michael Eisner will agree they have the ability to support the product or not support the product based on their own views. And again, that was the product being affected in that instance, and not just internal employees. Yeah, but when you say though, when people say that Disney's ideologically driven, they don't care about money, they care about ideology. And then you hear Michael Eisner say, we don't care if you boycott. We don't care if it hurts us financially. We're doing what we think is right. You don't think that sounds like Bob Iger? In what way? Well, in the way that he's in this particular said in this ideology, the ideology first before making money for the company. We hear all the time from the conservatives today that you should worry about your stockholders. What about Michael Eisner right here? He's not worried about stockholders. He's okay with a boycott because he's going to do his value system. I was told that was wrong, that Bob Iger does that. It's going to be on a case-by-case basis, especially when given at the time, right? So again, this was an internal policy that they had, right? And that would only affect them internally versus creatives in the company injecting certain politics into specific programming aimed at certain kids or, included in certain product, that's going to be taken differently than, what you might do internally for yourself. It's just a different thing. So when Iger is saying, look, we're going to be standing on the right side of this issue, that issue, whatever, and sometimes that's going to make us unpopular and that's okay. Is he talking about it in the product sense? Because even I don't know. Or is he talking about it in, what statements they might make over certain legislation or what actions they might take, et cetera. I think it is going to be on a case-by-case basis for Iger. And I think even with Michael Eisner in this instance, that's the difference right here. What do you think, George?
Okay, so I'm going to kind of be like in the middle here because I do understand both sides of your understanding. Argument, yeah. Like as far as with yours, OG, like I understand, like when I watched that, yeah, I saw complete Bob Iger of how he chooses his wording and how he can kind of withhold the company and be very prolific of saying, I know what I'm doing. This is to better the company. I'm going to stand by it moving forward, yada, yada, yada. So take notes, Josh. But also to the same token on Dre's side, I can understand where both instances differentiate because this was something that was internally within the company as far as with Eisner was talking about of what they wanted to do with their own policy. Right. With the Reed Creek, the company was going outside of their own policy and taking on the state and the governor in that sense. And that was, and to be quite frank, a governor that kind of has a big ego issue, let's just say, when it comes to if you challenge him, Yeah. So I can understand both senses. So I think in a way, so yeah, I guess I could actually say it goes by a case-by-case basis of what you're actually talking about, where I think Eisner kind of got through under that radar, and the same thing with Dre's example back from last summer with Roe, and it's because it's what they wanted to do within their own company to say, this is our rights of as a company, this is what we want to do. But when you go and you challenge outside of your own bubble, that's where it could become what the mess is today.
Yeah. I just like the overall point I was trying to make too is just that like we hear a lot that Disney's putting their value system before the money, that they don't care if they go woke, they're going broke and they don't care. And I'm like, I just heard a lot of that with Eisner right now. We don't care if you're going to boycott. We're going to do what we like, what we want to do because of the politics. I agree
with you with policy, that. Though. I agree, right? Yeah. Right. But I agree with you with that, though. And as I said, I could definitely see Eisner and Iger having those similarities based off of that interview. But I wonder if that would be differently if back in 93, they would have the same resources as far as social media goes, where, like I wonder like how that would play out.
It's easier to maybe not even necessarily organize, but to get something trending,
right,
and get people around a certain, let's say, idea or philosophy,
right?
Whether it goes to boycott, whatever, right? Than it was back then. So that's a different. It's a fair point, George. It's a different time period for that as well. Look, you heard Bob Iger talk about, I believe, on the shareholders meeting, right? Where that, he had that caller call in that was, very enthusiastic, let's say, about,
the parades and
okay.
Yes.
But you get what I'm saying.
Talk about going balls to the wall.
He did say there that, look, we have to be mindful of these things, right? Some people are very enthusiastic about these things, right? They take issue with some of the decisions that we're making, especially as it relates to children and so forth. So we have to be mindful of that. We have to be mindful of the moms who might take issue with that, right? And be more inclusive in that way when it comes to our content. When you're having some of these things introduced on a content level, it's different than internal policy. And when you say something, when you make a statement about something, it's different than a goal for the entire company to overturn legislation. These things are different, and so I think the company is in the middle of that reevaluation process. We will see what eventually happens there in that space, but look, Michael Eisner even said it's your right to boycott. And maybe people will. I'm not saying that has occurred lately, but I think there has been a little bit of a brand withdrawal that I think the company is actively assessing and saying, you know what, maybe they got a point here. Maybe we do have to reevaluate some things, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
No, they're moderating for sure. They're moderating for sure, and they should. They absolutely should. I just wanted to kind of bring it up because I think that there is a narrative out there right now that this kind of thing is new to Disney. It's a Bob Iger thing, and it really wasn't. And like I said, even the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction changed to become, it was like to the young people watching. The pirates used to chase the women because they were sexually attracted to the women. They were chasing them. They were because they were attracted to them. They weren't chasing them because they had baguettes under their arms. In their hands. Yeah, exactly. Yes, this was a social change. I mean, this is something that Bob Iger would do today, probably something similar. We've seen them change. We've seen them change pirates recently. So it's just not. This whole thing about Disney and being PC and sort of pushing, it's been bubbling for a while. And that's all I'm kind of saying. And maybe it's worse now, but it's not necessarily a new thing. Like Iger came in and everything is different now. It's not necessarily.
It's certainly more overt than it ever has been.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think people are starting to notice it more than they ever have. Whether that be the increased social media attention to it, or it's just very much noticeable. I think I think they are actively looking to reassess on that front, and like I said, I think it's a good thing.
They should. Do we have more? Do we have more Daddy Josh? Okay,
we got more Daddy Josh here. Here we go. He's talking about now. Some of the things that they have been doing in Florida and won't be doing anymore. Here we go.
There we go.
And you've, I think, announced that a number of people will not be moving to Florida. What was the driver behind that?
Yeah, so about a year or so ago, we had announced a new campus in Florida, and a lot has changed since we made that announcement. Number one, we have new leadership in place, and number two, the business conditions have changed pretty significantly. So taking that all into account, we said we think at this point in time we're going to reverse that decision. We're not going to have the campus in Florida, and we'll keep things as they are right now. From a cast perspective and an employee perspective, I'm making sure that we're taking care of our cast members the right way. But conditions had changed, and so we decided it was appropriate to make that change as well.
Again,
well, it's funny.
He's not saying that, hey, because we're in a business unfriendly state that Florida is in, we decided to pull away. Because a lot of the media are taking it that way. They're taking it, amid DeSantis fight, Disney's pulling back, right? You would
Right.
think that he would kind of include like, hey, look, listen, we have a governor who doesn't necessarily want our business. We reassessed and we thought we weren't going to, go. You would think that he would include that. He does not, though, and I am shocked to see that he didn't in this instance. Go ahead.
Yeah, he's more on message than he was on the last one. On this one, because he was at least acknowledging there is a change in the business landscape. But with him acknowledging that there's a change in the business landscape, and that's why
It's
they
like,
pulled back.
why? Like, say
Exactly.
why?
What has changed?
What has changed? And everyone knows what has changed, but it's contradicting what he just said before, where nothing's changed, and now everything's changed. So it's like, what is it, Daddy Josh? It's like, it's like.
I wanted to play this clip here from the Disney Josh podcast talking about this because it kind of fleshed out a little bit more of why this didn't actually come about. Now, Len Testa even acknowledges it's like, look, listen, we know why this thing didn't happen. It didn't necessarily happen because of DeSantis, but it was smart that they utilize, the decision for their, for more leverage in this fight. And I said it at the time. I said, yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a good idea. That's a good move. Here's what they had to say though about what was really going on here, and I think it was interesting and worth including here.
So they announced this in July of 2021. 60 acres, 1.8 million square feet, 2,000 jobs, average salary of 120K, right? And what was the budget, the build budget that Disney had for this? How much was this going to cost them?
The original figure that was reported was $864 million. Okay. But the thing that got touted, because remember, this was really controversial because you and I, March of this year, when we did our tour of Imagineering, we went to the Disney's Glendale Creative Campus. Which occupied, all, what used to be the old, the airport there.
Right. It's blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks of buildings. It's a lot of space.
That's it, exactly. Yeah. But Disney built there with an understanding that it got all sorts of tax breaks from the city of Glendale, likewise the state of California. And that was ultimately what this was really all about. And this is what, how Bob Chapek was sort of touting himself to Wall Street. It's like, well, look, we're going to spend $864 million to build this thing. But over the next 20 years, we're going to get from the state of Florida $570 million worth of tax credits.
That's not nothing. Yeah.
But then Disney's investment in the Lake Nona Town Center Creative Campus, it happens all the time. It's project creep. It went from the $864 million to now it's $1 billion, and now it's $1.3 billion.
Yeah, that seems to be the way every Disney project works. There's the number that they announce with in the press release, and then there's the number that they deliver.
That's it exactly.
That's it exactly. You're going to invest 1.3 to save 5. That doesn't make much sense. At all. So it's that I think that's why that this project is got shut down.
It absolutely was. Actually, Matt Bellani had Scott Gustin on his podcast. I don't know if you guys checked that out today, but Bellani was saying the same thing. It's like this was done for financial reasons, pulling back, and it was just kind of like icing on the cake, the gravy to kind of stick it to DeSantis on the way out, right? It wasn't because of DeSantis necessarily, and believe me, I don't like DeSantis. I would love to blame him, and say it was all his fault, but it really wasn't all his fault. This was a financial decision.
Oh yeah, it goes both ways.
Right? It was, and I think they just utilized the moment, sort of like, while we're doing it, a little added bonus, we'll stick it to DeSantis on the way out,
Well, I will say, you're, because this is not happening, you're talking about thousands of employees, all with an average earning of like $120,000 per year. That was going to come in this area right here. You're talking about a big loss for Florida, overall, even if it's not connected to the DeSantis issue. This is tough, especially for the Lake Nona area that was kind of relying on this big investment to coming. So this is it's kind of unfortunate right there. Again, Josh D'Amaro should have capitalized on that, didn't. That is unfortunate as well.
Exactly. No, he's not ready for prime time, this guy. Actually, Trump actually took. I don't know if you saw the video of him today talking about Disney.
Oh,
he did.
Did he really?
He did. I'll send you the clip. Maybe we could do a video on it. It's a very short clip.
Yeah. Okay.
It's about Disney, and well, you know what? Hold on one sec. You want me to bring it up? You want to play it before?
You could pitch it over to me. Yeah, go ahead. Try to find it. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up our Josh DiMauro comments right here. He does, the rest of it's kind of dry, as it kind of has been leading up to this. But there was a couple of notable things that did come up here. Again, on the Florida front. Galactic Star Cruiser obviously closing, right? And I think the big thing that people were taking away from this conversation was that there was going to be, I believe, anywhere between 100 to 150 million spread out, not spread out, but over the next 2 quarters, right? To a maximum depreciation value of like $300 million, right? And people were like, okay, that's a lot of money that is being saved by depreciation. And it's like, how much was this thing really? How much did the thing really cost? I guess, and I'm bringing it up right now, OG, I guess the Disney Dish podcast is saying that the overall, we'll go ahead and play 45 thoughts here in a moment right here. I guess, so for the facility itself, they're saying anywhere between, like $250 million?
Right.
For the actual facility. However, the development costs associated with, plotting out the story narratives, right? Those kind of branching narratives, developing the technology that they would actually use to bring this to light, developing the training programs, etc. The testing that they did in Glendale and otherwise, right? To kind of more, what do you want to say, hone this experience and deliver something that is deliverable. That was $1 billion.
Right.
Which is a lot of money.
That is a lot, but I don't even think because a lot of this stuff that they researched and developed and everything is going to be utilized, I think, in the theme park now.
Hopefully.
So it's not like a total waste.
Right.
We've speculated many times on the show that the reason why we didn't get the restaurant in Galaxy's Edge was because they threw it into the Star Cruiser.
Right.
So does the restaurant come back with the stuff they learned from the Star Cruiser? And so all that research and development went to something at the end of the day. It went to the new edition in Galaxy's Edge. So yes, it's $1 billion, but I think that some of that might be kind of offset a little bit by them utilizing some of what they learned in the park now. So it didn't go completely to waste. Now, George has food coming. So we got, and actually so do I. I do have a DoorDash, but mine's probably a little bit behind yours, George. So I got about another 20 minutes. But let's do Trump.
Yeah, let's do this, and then I'll. Yeah, then I'll. Yeah, cool.
Okay. Sure.
Here we go.
And look at Disney and what a mess it is. Could have worked out an easy settlement, but no, he wanted to show the fake news how tough a guy he is. He's not. And the whole Disney thing is really very unfortunate. Now thousands and thousands of jobs are being stopped, and a lot of people are very upset about it. Thank you.
So, this is his way. This is his way of trying to get on Disney's good side to update his audio animatronic to not look too much like Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they did update his AA. I think it looks pretty good now. We'll see what happens with the speaking version of it. But I'll say this. Well, okay, I shouldn't say that. Now I'm implying something for 2024. Okay, getting back to the main story here. What he's talking about there is Bob Iger didn't just say $17 billion over the next 10 years. He also said 13,000 jobs. That's what Mr. 45 here is actually saying. Right. And it's interesting because, well, that is now up in the air, as has actually been recorded by the company in their latest legal filing in federal court. Very interesting.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I mean, it's weird to me to see this Disney kind of be like a point of it's like an actual issue in this election at this point, right?
But then you contrast it with Daddy Josh, and Josh is saying, nope, we're still investing $17 billion. It's like, wait, what?
Like right now, you would think like we all had this mindset that we were going to say, okay, we're going to get answers from this Q&A with Josh DiMauro. I don't have answers. Now I have more questions.
Right, exactly. Oh, here we go, George. Here we go.
Oh no! I must have hit that trap
It's yeah, exactly. It's like when you're in your office, like at your job, right? And like the higher ups are all talking about like layoffs, and there's like something's afoot. Like everyone in the office can kind of feel it, right? There's something afoot, something's going on, right? We're seeing all these meetings and secret huddles and all stuff. And there's one guy in the corner going, "This is great, man. Everything's just fantastic. No problems here." It's like just out of touch, you know? And that's what Daddy Josh kind of reminds me of. It's like he's the one guy in the office not realizing what's going on. Everyone else is like, oh, something's going on. There's something afoot. And Daddy Josh is like, no, things are great. I'm doing my work. I'm happy. I'm good. It's like, no, you're not good.
He goes beyond that and he says, well, we've already started to invest the $17 billion. So look at this investments for Tiana's Bayou Adventure and Epcot and all these things that have been going on leading up to this point. So it's really fascinating. It kind of undercut Iger's argument that, oh, well, if DeSantis, relents, then we'll activate the $17 billion funnel right there. In fact, that might not actually be the case. So I was surprised that Josh D'Amaro undercut Disney's leverage in that way, and Bob Iger's leverage specifically. I thought that was huge.
I just have to stop you guys really quick. My food is here, but I'm just going to sign off really quick. On my behalf, I want to thank everyone for joining us for this over 2 hour, very intense discussion. I loved it. I'm so glad I was able to be a part of it. Thank you, OG. Thank you, Vash. And if you want to find me, my YouTube channel, Disney Family Man 23. You can interact with me on Twitter at Disney George. Check out the podcast, A Walk with Walt. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info. And before I log out here, OG, thank you so much. Vash, always a pleasure. Daddy Josh, wake the fuck up. Thank you very much.
Have a good one, George.
See ya. Thank you,
See you later, buddy.
Appreciate it, buddy.
Bye.
Thank you.
And we'll go ahead and close it out as well. Fantastic conversation. We dove into everything today. The Daddy Josh stuff, just so I kind of want to say one thing. Like, we're hard on him, and rightfully so. He needs to step it up, though, because this isn't like he's really playing with fire with this. This has real ramifications, this lawsuit and this whole thing. And the Disney company right now needs everyone to be kind of on board, kind of A+, on their A game, so to speak. He needs to step it up. He needs to step it up. The D23 thing with the what if segment, he's not announcing anything. It's just, come on, Josh, let's go.
He needed to have the broader context in mind, and unfortunately he didn't. Now, he did say some interesting things in that and handled himself pretty well. He did go on and clarify some things. So they do have, 3 new cruise liners coming. So I think George had a question about that previously before. Those are coming online right there. He did talk about some of these other things that people have had questions on, but on Florida specifically, he needed to be in line with Iger, and I think he just really kind of crapped the bed there. So thank you so much, OG, for letting us all go through that right there. I think it was very illuminating and enlightening. Thank you so much, because all of this wouldn't be possible without you, and letting us play the audio, I think, is going to be really rewarding for not just us as fans, but to our audience watching.
No, absolutely. No, thank you, Drake, for finding the audio. I didn't even know there was audio for it, so that was awesome to kind of go through it, break it down. A lot of great stuff dropped today. The Michael Eisner stuff, the Trump stuff is really funny, and that's only going to heat up, dude. And we're going to get a lot more, I think, clips from him in regards to that. I really want to do a video with you soon, actually, to kind of talk about. Well, I think you had a clip from Barnes you wanted to break down, so maybe we can do that in a video soon.
Soon, yeah. As to maybe why Mr. What is it? Disaster? Is that what they're calling him now? Why he is getting into this race to begin with, and what that might mean for the dispute on an ongoing basis. I think that's going to be really interesting. But thank you so much, OG, for having me on. I'll go ahead and close myself out there.
There you
if you
go.
guys want to go ahead and follow me, you can go do so right down there at Fast Sky. Just go ahead and type it in, and it should pop up for, as Christine Waysons McCarthy would say, for all the
robust
discussion right there. And if you guys want to see me, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now on Orange Grove 55. And we have some amazing shows of all types: Citrus Corner, Orange Nerd, Orange Grove, Story Geeks with Jay, and including my own Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice, news, and info, squeezed fresh, right from the Grove.
Thank you very much.
There you go. I just wanted to play that. I don't know why.
There we go. There we
That's
go.
the one right there, right?
That's the one.
But that should just wrap it up there, OG, I think.
That wraps it up.
And there's the biggest bargain of all.
I'm starting to bring that one back. That's an oldie but goodie. That's an oldie but goodie.
I love it.
But thank you all so much for watching. Comment down below with all your thoughts on everything we discussed today. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye, everybody.